Chapter 503. Translator, Ryuxinji Editor, H2DH2 Mr. In the end, Wang Lu was unable to convince the demon to play the role of a real person. Although his creativity had indeed piqued the demon's interest, there was a technical hurdle that he could not overcome. Those bugs, just smelling their scent makes me nauseous. Possessing them and whatnot, our subconscious repulsion would instantly reduce their city to nothingness. Considering the demon's 2,000 years of absolute rule, Wang Lu did not feel that he was bragging, so he could only regretfully offer an alternative. Have you heard of Mahjong? What's that? A very exciting and cool traditional competitive game. With that, Wang Lu opened his mustard seed bag and took out a huge piece of jadeite. His 5 fingers gently touched the jadeite, and the jadeite was neatly cut into hundreds of cubes. Moreover, each cube had a green back and a flawless white front. Then, as Wang Lu's fingers moved gently, various patterns appeared on the front of the cubes. Ouyang Shang was amused. You're going to teach her Mahjong? That's right, and it's a special kind of Mahjong. What's so special about it? Wang Lu smiled, then looked up at the demon and said, compared to the Mahjong that can be found everywhere in the mortal world, my Mahjong has a unique way of playing. The loser has to take off their clothes. Wait a minute, how come I've never heard of such a dirty game? That's why I say you're good at everything, eldest senior brother. It's just that you lack experience and knowledge. As Wang Lu bickered with the eldest senior brother, he explained the rules of the game to the invisible demon. The demon's primordial spirit was so powerful that she understood the rules of the game in a flash. Games in the mortal world were not very interesting to her, but the biggest charm of competitive games was the battle with the opponent. Although the 2 little guys in front of her were not worth mentioning in terms of strength, they always had new and surprising ideas. Alright, I'll play with you guys. But about the rules of taking off your clothes. I know what you want, so I can promise you that if you can really beat me, I'll let you see the looks I'm so proud of. Wang Lu's intentions were exposed, but he did not feel awkward. Instead, he smiled. Sure, but before the game starts, can you let me put on my clothes first? Before this, the demon had forced Wang Lu to appear naked in order to get a clear whiff of his scent. Wang Lu had been unperturbed, not in a hurry to put on his clothes after running around naked for so long. There was no harm in letting others see what he was proud of anyway. There was no point in holding on to it. What's the point of keeping to himself? Formless Demon was also very concerned about the fairness of the competition. After all, the fun was to make people take off their clothes. If they had no clothes to take off at the beginning, how could they play the game? Although Wang Lu Yunxi, she was still, the demon was still the demon's to caricature of the demon. But what she was interested in was to let these 2 proud little guys taste the taste of failure again and again. But soon she found that she should not be so indulgent to her opponent, because Wang Lu's so-called putting on his clothes was clearly a loophole in the program. After he put on his underwear and Taoist robe, he began to put on more clothes. From a simple Mandarin jacket to a luxurious leather coat, he wrapped dozens of layers inside and out, and among them were many small pieces such as belts, shawls, and so on. Obviously, these pieces were small, but they were still counted as one piece. God knows how many things Wang Lu stored in his mustard seed bag. These clothes were clearly not what he usually wore. The clothes that he wore on the outside were at least several times larger than his size, and the style also seemed to be quite out of place. But he had them at his fingertips, and they came in handy at this time. While the invisible demon was stunned, she suddenly heard Ouyang Shang say, "Oh right, there's still this trick to use." Then he also untied the mustard seed bag on his waist and put on the clothes one by one. In a short while, he wrapped himself into a ball. These 2 disciples of Spirit Sword sect who were separated for more than 100 years actually had an extraordinary tacit understanding in this kind of pain in the ass thing. Hey, you 2, don't go too far, I think this game is a bit not fun anymore. Thereupon, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang quickly took off half of their clothes, and then the three of them officially started the game. During the game, there was no lightning, thunder, wind, or water. The three of them did not use their magical power, they just relied on the most basic skills and luck to compete. Because if they used their magical power, there was no need to play this game. It was guaranteed that the great demon would win the game. Not to mention that Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang would not be able to find any decent tiles, it was very likely that they would find a row of plum blossoms, orchids, bamboo, and chrysanthemums. And when it came to basic skills, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang actually had no advantage. No matter how talented they were, it was impossible for them to delve into every trivial matter. Not to mention, among the entertainment items, mahjong was just a trivial matter, a mortal's game, which was not worth the time to delve into. What they possessed was nothing more than the ability to calculate and plan that far surpassed the mortals. But when it came to calculating and planning, who could compare with this great demon who had played the demon race in the palm of her hand for 2,000 years? Even if the latter was just a beginner, her skill was still above the two disciples of Spirit Sword sect. Then what they were competing for was luck. The so-called luck was invisible and unpredictable. For many people in the mortal world, it was something that they believed in, but if they did not believe in, it was not. Even if some people were famous for their amazing luck, they did not dare to say that they would be able to rely on luck. However, for the cultivators of the immortal path, mastering the law of change of heaven and earth was the ability to eat. And this two words, luck, was a reflection of the law of change of heaven and earth. Therefore, cultivators naturally had a different understanding of it. Luck was real. Between people, the difference between good luck and bad luck was also real. Of course, this did not lead to an absolute result. For example, no matter how lucky a person was, it was impossible to throw a coin 100 times in a row. However, lucky people were often able to turn the coin in their favor at the critical moment. The three people present were undoubtedly people with good luck. Without good luck, it was impossible for Ouyang Shang to have the heavenly spirit root and enter the Spirit Sword sect. And Wang Lu's luck was even more needless to say. However, the great demon's luck was also not simple. In the world, except for a few kinds of ancient creatures, there was no one who was born powerful. If one wanted to have the ability to penetrate the heaven and earth, one must diligently practice hard, coupled with enough good luck. With the strength of this great demon, she must be extremely lucky to be able to grow to the point where she was today. According to the general standard, her luck must be much better than that of Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang. After all, the world was so big that there were countless king pill-level geniuses. However, the great demon-level powerhouses were not common. The great demon knew that the two little guys relied on luck to win, but she also firmly believed that these two little guys were overconfident. In terms of luck, at least she would not lose to them. Although she was seriously injured by a sneak attack and suppressed here for 2,000 years, which seemed to be bad luck, she did not waste these 2,000 years. On the contrary, the life of imprisonment made her realize more things. Once she was free, she might be able to break through the bottleneck that she thought she would never be able to break through. Compared to the breakthrough in strength, a mere 2,000 years of imprisonment was simply too cheap. Not to mention that in these 2,000 years, her life was actually very comfortable. Both sides had great confidence. The great demon guessed that she only needed half a day to make the two little guys naked, which made her feel ashamed. After half a day, the result was indeed settled. The great demon looked at the neatly arranged row of jade cards in front of her in disbelief. The messy arrangement made her completely lose interest in continuing the game from the beginning. But the two little guys in front of her showed a smile after arranging the cards. This damn smile. In the previous half-day of competition, every time they showed such a smile, it meant that they were not far from victory. In fact, they did win many times. Out of 10 times, they won at least 8 times, and each time they won by a large margin. It had nothing to do with any magic or card skills, and it was not cheating. In front of her, no one could cheat. It was pure and absolute luck. In short, these two young people's luck was so strong that it even suppressed the strength of the great demon who was at the top of the world. And this was impossible. Just as she was thinking, it was Wang Lu's turn to draw a card. As a result, he directly won the first card and won by a large margin. Forget it, I don't want to play anymore. The great demon finally lost interest in the game. In fact, she was not interested in mahjong from the beginning. She was only interested in winning the two little guys. Now that she couldn't win, there was no need to play anymore. It's really strange. You two little guys are actually not that great. In the previous 9 regions, it was not uncommon for the king pill to be at the same level as you two. How can you be so lucky? With such good luck, please become a little stronger so that we can be mentally prepared. Wang Lu was stunned. What you mean by before? Is it before the age of chaos? I don't know what the age of chaos is. I can't remember the last time I came to 9 regions. If it weren't for someone plotting against me, I'm afraid I would never come here again. Forget it, since I'm willing to bet, I'll let you see my true face. After that, the darkness in the cave receded. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang only felt that their eyes suddenly opened up. The rock walls around the cave also became clear, and then, there was a corner that was still dark and deep. But that was no longer the darkness that the great demon used to hide her figure, but the great demon's body. First of all, it was a black fur that faintly glowed under the light of the fire. Looking up along the luster, 2 star-like eyes shone brightly. And then, they really saw her outline. It was a mountain-sized wolf with elegant curves and a pitch-black body. Although it was not a human, it had the beauty that all living things could feel. Perhaps ordinary people couldn't feel it clearly, but the more powerful they were, the more they could feel the power of this shocking beauty. The great demon didn't boast. This was indeed a beauty that was worth being proud of. Ouyang Shang's eyes were slightly blurred, deeply shocked by the beauty of this pure black creature. Wang Lu was even more surprised. He took a few steps back and almost fell to the ground. Because he had seen similar creatures, but they were far less huge and shocking. Even their temperament was poles apart. But he was sure that they must be from the same origin. Western Mountain Black Tide, Mixed Fur Native Dog. Fenrir? You're the Western Continent Demon Wolf Fenrir. Hey, you actually recognize me. Chapter 504. Encountering an old friend in a foreign land should be a happy thing, especially when the opponent, who was on full alert and on edge, found out that it was the mother of his friend, which made him feel even more relieved. However, in a flash, Wang Lu felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Because he had realized that he had made a mistake again. The one who caused the destruction of the Golden Generation was not the invisible devil that the desert demons had feared for 2,000 years, but someone else. The reason was very simple. If the disaster was caused by this monster wolf, then when Wang Lu picked up Quan Zhuhua from the Black Tide in the Western Mountain, there was no reason for Wang Wu not to recognize its breed. That was the descendant of the murderer that she hated for life. Wang Wu did not recognize it, and even the other people on Spirit Sword Mountain did not recognize it. In the end, it was Aya who revealed the secret. This could only mean that in the immortal cultivation of the cultivators of Spirit Sword Mountain, Western Continent monster Wolf Fenrir did not occupy any important position. At least, it was impossible for it to be the culprit that caused all the disasters. Then, who was the real murderer? Since his time traveling until now, Wang Lu had experienced too many failed expectations, and along the way, he had gone in the wrong direction too many times. Therefore, he didn't mind being wrong again. In any case, wasn't success the fruit that could only be tasted after repeated failures? Moreover, each failure could bring out new clues, so it was not worthless. However, this time, the clue brought out by guessing the wrong target was chilling. If the real murderer was not the demon wolf Fenrir. Considering Quan Zhuohua's survival in the Black Tide 100 years later, it meant that she, as a mother, was likely to have died in the disaster, or even died silently. But with her strength, who could kill her in the present age? There was only one possibility. Wang Lu bowed his head in contemplation and then said, "Excuse me. You said that the opponent who attacked you 2,000 years ago is now suppressed by you? In other words, he is not dead?" Fenrir was obviously not interested in this topic. Her voice was somewhat indifferent. "Humph, sooner or later, I will kill him. In other words, he is not dead?" Fenrir glanced at him and did not speak again. She raised her head high to show her disdain. Obviously, she was extremely dissatisfied with Wang Lu's reaction. It was rare for him to reveal his true appearance. In the past 2,000 years, these two little fellows were the only ones who were fortunate enough to see this flawless body. This was an honor that they could die with no regrets. The one beside him had a good reaction. He was already deeply immersed in it and could not extricate himself. Obviously, he knew how to appreciate beauty. But the other one was obviously not enlightened. At this time, instead of kneeling down and worshipping the goddess of beauty, why did he care about that bitch from 2,000 years ago? Could it be that he felt that he couldn't suppress a sneak attacker with his own strength? Although she had indeed used 2,000 years and was still unable to destroy him, that was only because she was trapped in a cage. Once she broke free, she could immediately destroy his soul. Not to mention that the ordeal this time had caused her to gradually be reborn and reach a higher level. And even if he was worried that there were hidden dangers, why was he not even raising his head? Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted just because he was doted on? TSK, these human little fellows have always been like this. With just a little bit of color, they don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. After thinking about it, she was very dissatisfied with Wang Lu. Her original good impression of him quickly disappeared, because she felt that she was being used. The little guy did not care about her situation, only cared about the resources that she might have in her hands. She hated this kind of little thing the most. Wang Lu was going to ask for more details, but when he saw Fenrir's angry face and the black shadow gradually shrouding him, he suddenly realized that now was not a good time to ask questions. At the same time, now was not a good time to apologize immediately, because once he apologized, it meant that he admitted his mistake. For this Western continent monster wolf, a toy that made mistakes was no longer qualified to be a toy. Therefore, Wang Lu had to find a way to arouse her interest, such as. He slightly turned his head, making his eyes more away from the monster wolf, and then circulated his power to his face, making his cheeks blush. The words that came out of his mouth became incoherent. "I think you still have to be careful. After all, as the saying goes, it's better to be safe than sorry. It's not easy for you to cultivate to this point. Moreover, in addition to being strong enough, you are also so, Monster Wolf Fenrir became impatient. What the hell is this? She even had the murderous intention in her heart. Then, at this time, she suddenly found that Wang Lu's reaction seemed a bit strange. His eyes wandered left and right, refusing to stop on her body, as if there was something unsightly on her body. Thus, Fenrir snapped, "Mortal, look at me." Upon hearing this, Wang Lu's whole body was shocked. He felt that the 206 non-phase sword bones were faintly numbed by this shout. Then, he somewhat reluctantly raised his head and looked straight into the monster wolf's eyes, which seemed very reluctant. This made Fenrir even more annoyed. "Mortal, is my figure not worthy of your eyes? No, the main thing is, you're not wearing clothes." "What did you say?" Wang Lu tried to make his face redder. "Don't look at indecent things." The words "don't look at indecent things" made the monster wolf Fenrir unable to react for a long time. Wang Lu took this opportunity to turn his head and then explained, "It's because your figure is too beautiful that I'm afraid that if I look at it for too long, I won't be able to hold it." "Of course, if you don't mind me not being able to hold it. The happiness of raising a child that I said before still counts." Fenrir felt that her brain seemed to be unable to wrap around it. After a moment, she asked with interest. "For you humans, my appearance can actually make you interested in that aspect?" Wang Lu confidently said, "Beauty is not divided by gender, sexiness is not divided by race, I have always been a man of universal love." With that, Wang Lu inwardly remembered the mother and daughter who were neither human nor beast on the Grand Cloud Mountain. To say universal love was really not a lie. Especially for dogs, he simply had an indissoluble bond. "Well, you pass, little guy." With that, the monster wolf Fenrir smiled. She once again felt a new pleasure, so her voice also returned to its previous relaxed tone. "Next, say what you wanted to say before. What do you think about my old rival?" "I'm worried that your old rival is still restless because your experience is too similar to his. Both of you were sneak attacked and suppressed, falling into a deep predicament. After 2,000 years, you have found a way to break through. I'm worried that he will also find it." The monster wolf Fenrir laughed and said, "You're worried that he can break free?" For 2,000 years, I have been personally suppressing him. His every move can't escape my perception. I'm not worried that he will make a comeback, but you, a new little guy, are worried?" Wang Lu paused and then confidently said, rationally, "I know that this is a groundless fear, but I can't help but worry about you. Before I see that guy has no hope of making a comeback, I can't be at ease." In the long life of the monster wolf Fenrir, she had never seen such a maverick little guy. Although she knew that he was mostly saying flowery words at this time, but these flowery words didn't seem to be annoying. Perhaps it was because of the amiable smell of Wang Lu, or perhaps it was because she was really bored for too long in the past 2,000 years, so she finally decided to meet Wang Lu's request. "Since you are so worried." The monster wolf Fenrir shook her head. "Well, I'll let you see the miserable situation of that guy now, so that you can really feel at ease." After that, Fenrir's front paw slammed on the ground. Suddenly, the ground cracked, and a bottomless pit appeared on the ground. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang couldn't help but curiously look at it. The deep darkness in the pit made people feel awe, as if it led to an unknown space. Fenrir explained, "This is his cage. Now, he is suppressed in the 9th level of the abyss. It is an absolute nothingness. As long as little guys like you are thrown in, you will be melted by the nothingness in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. He can only struggle at death's door. For 2,000 years, he has not received a trace of energy supplement, and he has to constantly consume his own energy to survive. He will only get weaker and weaker. If he couldn't come out 2,000 years ago, there is no hope now." Wang Lu looked at the endless abyss in the pit and asked, "Absolute nothingness? This is very safe." Listening to Fenrir's explanation, Wang Lu was even more confused. Could it be that this line was also broken? Absolute nothingness. For the vast majority of creatures, it was a land of death. Only a Yuanying stage Taoist master could maintain his body in the nothingness. Therefore, if Fenrir really locked him in the absolute nothingness, then there was indeed no possibility for him to escape. But vaguely, Wang Lu always felt that things were not so absolute. Unfortunately, with only insignificant clues, he could only think of this for a while, and it was difficult for him to continue thinking. "Well, you have seen the 9th abyss, you should be relieved, right?" Wang Lu smiled and said, "Worthy of being the famous world destroyer demonic wolf, I have nothing to worry about." It would be strange if he didn't worry. If the real murderer of 100 years ago was really the old enemy of the demonic wolf, things would be easier to deal with, because at least he could lock the target range, and then he could be on full alert. But now, all the clues were cut off, and he could only start over again. So after a moment of silence, Wang Lu changed the topic and asked, "In this savage land, is there any powerful existence that is particularly worth paying attention to?" "Nothing." The demonic wolf Fenrir replied decisively, "This land is indeed magical, but it has not given birth to two powerful individuals. So you don't have to worry about any external threats. In the first few hundred years, there were indeed some ignorant things that wanted to take advantage of me when I was seriously injured, but they all became nourishment for me. Now, I hope that there is really a particularly powerful existence in this savage land. In that case, I might be able to get out of here in a few years." Wang Lu felt even more helpless after listening to it. This was not right, that was not right. What the hell was the real murderer of 100 years ago? Why was this reasoning so difficult? Just as he was fretting, he suddenly heard Fenrir say with some boredom, "This guy is also strange. After being trapped in the ninth abyss, he has not moved for 100 years, but he is not dead. He seems to be sleeping leisurely. I don't know what he is dreaming about." Wait, dream? Chapter 505. When it came to the dream, Wang Lu could not help but think of the most magnificent dream he had ever seen in his life, the new demon world that carried the last wishes of hundreds of millions of creatures, as well as the towering mountain of corpses that went straight into the sky, the winding secret room in the middle of the mountain of corpses, and the missing person in the secret room. If it was him, then all the clues could be connected. No, it should be inferred from the time point that it could only be him. The new demon world was born 2,000 years ago. At that time, the demon king who was supposed to guard the mountain of corpses quietly slipped away. And Fenrir was attacked and seriously injured by a powerful enemy, and then suppressed here. It was also 2,000 years ago, so how could people not associate it with the same thing? The last king of the demon world abandoned his people and led a new tribe to 9 regions. They went to the western continent to hunt the demonic wolf Fenrir, trying to transform its power for his own use. However, in the end, he was bitten back by the demonic wolf, and the tribe became the toy of the demonic wolf. Such an ending could be said to be self-inflicted. But similarly, if it was really him, Fenrir's 9th deep prison would not be so safe. Because the dream-building technique that the last king was best at was precisely to create something out of nothing, to produce power from nothingness. The only problem was that the amount of power needed to construct the dreamland was extremely huge. He was sneak attacked by the demon wolf Fenrir and fell into the 9th level of the abyss. In a hurry, what scale of dreamland could he construct by himself? However, no matter how weak the dream was, if it was allowed to develop and multiply for 2,000 years, once it started to snowball, it would not be surprising for it to eventually form any result. For example, 150 years later, the endless black tide that would cover the entire savage land. Thinking of this, Wang Lu felt that this matter should not be delayed. Hearing that Fenrir was recalling the past, he interrupted. "That powerful enemy is not tall, has delicate features, and looks like a young man?" Before his voice fell, the cave was suddenly shrouded in darkness. Fenrir's body suddenly stood up, and an irresistible and astonishing pressure came. "How do you know?" In the darkness, Fenrir's voice was no longer as relaxed as before. That unique female voice became heavy and hoarse, like the roar of a beast. Fenrir had been easy to talk to before because Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang had coaxed her to be happy, but if these two little guys had anything to do with that powerful enemy, Fenrir would no longer be happy. "I never told you what he looked like." Wang Lu operated his non-phase method, forcibly gathered his almost scattered primordial spirit, and then said with a sinking voice, 2,000 years ago, there was a great turmoil in the demon world. Fenrir didn't mind that Wang Lu had diverted the topic a bit too far. Instead, she nodded silently, continue. "That turmoil almost destroyed the demon world. At that time, the Demon King led the survivors to create an amazing miracle to continue the demon civilization. That miracle was called the New Demon World. With that said, Wang Lu stretched out his hand and pointed in front of him. Suddenly, colorful lights appeared in the darkness, transforming into various scenes of the New Demon World. Although it was only a spell, and Wang Lu didn't put his heart into it, causing the image to be blurred, Fenrir still felt the infinite vitality contained in the New Demon World. Continue. Wang Lu nodded and began to change the image. The perspective continued to leap upward until it broke through the blue dome of heaven, picked out the shackles of the New Demon World, and saw the truth of everything. Wang Lu presented the mountain of corpses of hundreds of millions of creatures in front of Fenrir. The Western continent's world destroyer demonic wolf had long been accustomed to destruction and death, but seeing this amazing mountain, it still felt frightened. What is this? The carrier of the New Demon World, the origin of everything. Wang Lu said and continued to move the perspective. From the corner of the mountain of corpses, he went deep into the mountain to explore the secret inside. Fenrir saw a long and narrow corridor, as well as the square secret room behind the corridor, the empty coffin in the middle of the secret room, and the surrounding walls that recorded the dream-building technique. Seeing these, she also understood the truth of everything. Wolves had always been cunning and swift creatures, and the Western continent's world destroyer demonic wolf was even more so. She might be capricious and playful, but she would never be slow and stupid. I have one last question. How do you know all this? Wang Lu responded indifferently. The sex elder was lucky enough to discover this secret and then passed it on to us, the elite disciples. Fenrir closed her eyes and accepted this answer for the time being, which was indeed the most reasonable answer. Wang Lu didn't reveal the truth that he was a time traveler. Although that was the easiest way to win people's trust, he still couldn't believe this Western continent's world destroyer demonic wolf. He was honest with Ouyang Shang because he trusted the other party. He knew that the two sides had the same interests and would only try to play the advantage of being a time traveler together to reverse history and save the golden generation of Spirit Sword sect. However, for Fenrir, the use of being a time traveler was obviously more than that. In order to avoid trouble, Wang Lu pushed everything to the groundless elder of the sect. Fortunately, Fenrir seemed to be preoccupied and didn't care about it seriously. Now that Fenrir knew the truth, the next step was to find a way to completely eliminate the Demon King in the 9th depth prison. For this point, Wang Lu currently had some ideas to try. However, before he opened his mouth, he heard Fenrir's slightly tired voice. Okay, I already know, you can go now. As soon as her voice fell, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang felt their vision blurred, and then they were sent out of the underground cave and directly came to the outside of the temple on the ground. She actually asked us to leave? Wang Lu was inexplicably surprised. Probably because she doesn't trust us. Ouyang Shang speculated. Next, she's going to deal with the powerful enemy in the 9th depth prison. She may have to use some forbidden secret method, during which her body will become particularly fragile, so she doesn't want us to be around. This explanation was reasonable, and Wang Lu had nothing to say. After a while, Wang Lu sighed again. In the end, the child-raising plan was not successfully implemented. If the two sides had the fate of merging, they probably wouldn't be so wary of each other at this time. Ouyang Shang wanted to nod and say yes, but he thought that the reason why the child-raising plan was not successful was largely because after Wang Lu was issued a close relative card, he, as a substitute, did not keep up in time. So he didn't comment on it, so as not to get himself into trouble. So he cleared his throat and changed the topic. At present, we probably can't go to the underground cave, we can't watch from the outside. About that dream-building technique, I have some ideas. Wang Lu smiled and said, I happen to have one too. Although the dream-building technique is created from nothing, to break the 9th depth prison, the energy required is extremely huge. And this requires a suitable carrier. But he is a person who can't even protect himself. Ouyang Shang said, most likely there is help from the outside, but from the situation of the tribe, it seems that even the Great Elder has forgotten what happened 2,000 years ago. Wang Lu said, it's not surprising that civilization is broken. And to accumulate power by the dream-building technique, this is obviously the biggest secret he needs to hide for 2,000 years. There are many people in the tribe, and it's easy to leak the secret, so it's better not to let them know, and simply use their power. So, the next step is to inquire about the dream world in the tribe. Maybe we will find something. The two seemed to be talking to each other, but in fact they were talking to themselves as they arranged the next step of the action. Then they agreed to act separately and inquire about the secret of the dream in the tribe. Then, the two of them went to the tribe's Great Elder at the same time. When they met at the entrance of the Great Elder's tent, both of them smiled. To inquire about the legend of the tribe, of course, the most straightforward way was to find the tribe leader. The two lifted the curtain together. In the middle of the tent, the Great Elder was enjoying his lunch. Seeing the two come in, he couldn't help but raise his head in surprise. Wang Lu went straight to the point. Elder, may I ask if there are any legends about dreams in this tribe? Ouyang Shang added, or, over the years, have there been people in the tribe who have had bizarre dreams? As for the content, it's probably related to resisting the invisible demon. Hearing the two ask this, the surprise on the Great Elder's face deepened. He put down his bowl. You two, why do you suddenly want to inquire about this? Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang didn't speak, but carefully observed the reaction of the Great Elder. The Great Elder didn't seem to have any abnormalities, and his reaction was what a person who had been asked an inexplicable question should have. But, with this old fellow's shrewdness, it was unrealistic to expect him to reveal a flaw in a few words. But Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang didn't have much time to waste on scheming with the old fellow, so the two of them used a quick and decisive tactic. It was the invisible demon who asked us to ask, Wang Lu said. She wanted us to find out the secret of your tribe's rebellion against her. What? The Great Elder finally revealed a look of horror. It was real, not the slightest bit fake surprise, fear, and a panic that was trying to hide something. Good, you finally revealed yourself. After seeing the subtle changes in the Great Elder's expression, Ouyang Shang smiled and stepped forward. His figure flashed and swayed in front of the other, his hand reaching out and grabbing his neck. Sure enough, you're hiding a secret. On the other side, Wang Lu raised his hand, using magic to cover up the sound in the tent, and then similarly moved forward. Tell me in detail about the secret of the dream. Saying that, he also put his hand on the Great Elder's head. If you don't want to say it yourself, we can only go and see for ourselves. What Wang Lu said was the soul-searching technique commonly used by evil cultivators, which directly searched a person's soul and seized their memory. It was very cruel. Usually, it was listed as one of the absolute taboos by righteous cultivators, but it was obvious that whether it was Wang Lu or Ouyang Shang, they both belonged to the type of people who had no taboos. The Great Elder intended to be stubborn to the end, but just as he thought about it, he saw a green light appear on the hands of the two. It was the sign of the soul-searching technique being used. Both Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang had learned the soul-searching technique. The fear of having his soul searched occupied the Great Elder's mind in an instant. Although his cultivation was extremely high, his strength was completely incomparable to the two of them. In the face of the naked threat of the two of them, he couldn't resist. Okay, I'll say. Chapter 506. Generally speaking, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were both decent people who knew etiquette. Even if they occasionally showed their moral integrity, there was always a bottom line in their means. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the two of them to bear the title of the head of the sect. However, it was precisely because the two of them shouldered the heavy responsibility of the sect that when they needed to use unscrupulous means, they would never hesitate. The great elder of the desert tribe had no enmity with the two of them, and there was nothing wrong with his character. The two of them had no reason to hurt him, which, no matter how one looked at it, was the behavior of evil people. However, at this time, what Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were facing was a matter of life and death for the entire Spirit Sword Mountain. To be evil or to be dead, this choice was not difficult at all. Under the deterrence of the two spells, the great elder did not persist for long before he divulged the tribe's secret. It was not that his will was not strong enough. Naturally, he was afraid of the soul-sucking technique. But more importantly, he could see that the two human cultivators were really willing to shed all pretense of cordiality to learn the secret. They had no scruples in their actions. If he did not let them go until he died, they were likely to turn to the rest of the tribe. At that time, this great tribe that had been in trouble for 2,000 years would be destroyed. Therefore, he had no choice at all. There was indeed a legend about a dream in the desert tribe. In the legend, every warrior who dies fighting against the invisible devil will enter the demon spirit dream after death. Demon spirit dream? I don't know what it is. For me, the demon spirit dream is just a legend that has been passed down in the tribe for many, many years. So far, no one has seen it, and no one knows what the demon spirit dream is. However, this legend is passed down from generation to generation of great elders. It is a precious secret, so there must be some meaning behind it. I think it should contain the secret that can defeat the invisible devil. Very good. With that, a green light flashed in Wang Lu's hand, and the great elder of the demon race fainted to the ground without saying a word. Wang Lu did not destroy his soul, but turned the soul-searching technique into the soul-stunning thorn and directly stunned him. I think I've guessed the answer. On the other side, Ouyang Shang also touched his chin. He just said that the dead warrior will enter the demon spirit dream? This setting is quite interesting. There are two explanations. First, this is a religious doctrine with no practical meaning. Its purpose is to guide the tribe members to fight bravely and face death with equanimity. However, the legend did not describe the content of the demon spirit dream in detail, and its ability to guide the tribe members was limited. Furthermore, for a tribe that is on the verge of extinction, underestimating the threat of death too much is courting destruction. Ouyang Shang nodded. And the second possibility is the dream-building technique. It should be the second one, said Wang Lu. I really underestimated the last king who personally guided hundreds of millions of creatures to build the new demon realm. I can't believe that he actually dared to plot against the dead. That's right, his power alone is limited. The tribe has fallen into the hands of Fenrir, and the scale can never be expanded to the point where it can support a powerful dream. Even when the tribe was at its strongest, there were no more than 10,000 people. But if we count all the people who died in the past 2,000 years, why didn't I think of this before? Ouyang Shang smiled and said, according to the dream-building technique that you obtained in the secret chamber of the Mountain of Corpses, there is no way to use completely dead people to build a dream. This is a miracle caused by technological innovation, and it can't be helped even if it exceeds the calculation. Then the question now is, what is the true appearance of the demon spirit dream? Junior brother Wang, about the dream-building technique. I haven't studied it in depth, but I think it's enough to sharpen a spear at the last minute. We don't need to build a dream, as long as we can participate in it and watch from the sidelines. As Wang Lu spoke, he unfolded the scroll rubbed in the secret chamber of the Mountain of Corpses. Countless complex patterns and patterns floated on the scroll along with the movement of Wang Lu's fingers. The secrets of the dream-building technique were presented in front of them bit by bit. Wang Lu kept moving his fingers to change the images and said, I remember I have seen a similar skill before, which can peep into private dreams. It is called endoscopy, right? Endoscopy. Are you sure it is used to peep into dreams? That's it. As Wang Lu spoke, he reached out and touched the scroll, and the rapidly changing images suddenly stopped. It can perceive the existence of dreams, which is suitable for the current situation. Although the legend of the demon spirit dream was known, no one in the desert tribe had actually seen its existence for 2,000 years. Obviously, the last demon king had hidden the dream. If one didn't have the corresponding skills, they wouldn't even be able to see it. Fenrir suppressed the demon king for 2,000 years, but she didn't know the existence of the dream. It was obviously related to this unique skill. The dream-building technique was a rare secret in the demon realm. If Wang Lu didn't happen to explore the demon realm and had a scroll that recorded the dream-building technique, he would be helpless at this time. The skill of perceiving the dream was not complicated. With the ability of Taoist King Pil, it didn't take long for them to completely master the technique and release it on the spot without hesitation. Both of them had a strong sense of crisis. They didn't want to waste even a second, even if there were still many problems that needed to be dealt with. For example, what if the attack on the Great Elder was discovered? They didn't inform Feng Yin and the others at all. What would their reaction be? But now, they could only let it go. Even if things developed in the worst direction, it was worth it as long as they could stop the resurrection of the Demon King. After a while, as the spell took effect, the two only felt a slight heat in front of them, and a new world appeared in front of them. The dream created by the dream-building technique didn't have a fixed location. Where the heart was, the dream was. When they realized the existence of the dream and observed it in the right way, they could see the dream built by their predecessors. The surrounding scenery gradually dimmed and became transparent. The light of the new world replaced everything. A vast and boundless battlefield appeared in front of them. At one end of the battlefield, countless demon warriors were like a red tide. They were holding excellent weapons and shouting loudly. Their momentum was like a rainbow, and their voice shook the sky. These warriors had the complete posture that the desert tribes yearned for. Each of them was exactly the same as the royal family that ruled the demon world 2,000 years ago. They were wearing heavy armor and were full of fighting spirit. An army composed of tens of thousands of royal warriors had once been invincible in the demon world. According to the history of the demon world, the first demon king unified the demon world with such a powerful army. Even the proud warriors of the Flaming Valley had to express fear of such power. In the eyes of Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang, perhaps due to the limitations of their origin, the incarnation of the demon spirits of these desert tribes couldn't completely replicate the posture of their ancestors. Their average level was still a lot lower. Most of the warriors were only equivalent to human cultivators in the Qi cultivating stage. Only 1/10 of them were in the foundation establishment stage, and there were only a few who were in the King Pill stage of the Shudan stage. However, the advantage in numbers made this army also not to be underestimated. There were at least hundreds of thousands of demons all over the mountains and plains, and hundreds of thousands of Qi cultivating stage cultivators. Even the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League would have to think twice in the face of such a force. However, on this battlefield, the demon race was suppressed to a disadvantage. Because their opponent was too powerful. It was a behemoth that occupied more than half of the battlefield, a thick darkness that couldn't be dispersed. Wherever the darkness passed, everything was annihilated, and even the blue sky was swallowed by it. The demon warriors used the weapons in their hands and their natural magical abilities to constantly condense power to attack the darkness, or ignite flames, call thunder, or throw blazing spears. Among them, a few with higher cultivation could integrate the power of tens of thousands of demon warriors, refine them into huge puppets, or launch amazing witchcraft. However, none of this could reverse the situation. The darkness was steadily expanding, and the devil army was losing ground again and again. Even the most elite soldiers would turn into miserable white bones in an instant if they were touched by the darkness, and then they would vanish in a puff of smoke, leaving nothing behind. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang watched from a corner of the battlefield for a while and saw that at least tens of thousands of warriors had died tragically. This rhythm is a bit strange. If they continue to fight like this, in less than half a day, the demons that are all over the mountains and plains will all die. How could they last for the past 2,000 years? Is it too coincidental that the two sides are fighting to the death, or? As Wang Lu spoke, he saw that on the side of the battlefield that belonged to the demon race, the sky suddenly opened, and countless demon warriors descended from the sky to join the battlefield. The addition of fresh troops finally stopped the decline of the demon race, and they began to slowly push forward. During this period, Wang Lu clearly saw that this batch of fresh troops was clearly those who had died before. What kind of technology is this, so powerful? If it was just an ordinary dream, let alone resurrection, no matter how bizarre it was, it wouldn't be worth making a fuss about. However, this demon spirit dream was clearly built on a complete and self-consistent rule system, and the scene of resurrection in front of them, what rules could explain it? The same question existed in Ouyang Shang's mind. However, before the two of them could come up with any ideas, they suddenly saw that in the distance, a high-level demon about the Shudon stage was hit by an invisible giant force and fell from the sky like a meteorite, landing right at their feet, creating a huge pit. The demon was also tenacious. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the pit and struggled to stand up, completely disregarding the fact that this would only aggravate his injury. After he got up, he saw Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang and was taken aback. "You are new here?" Wang Lu froze for a moment. "Yes, this is." The demon laughed upon hearing this. "Huh, you should have guessed that this is the demon spirit dream." "Ugh." Before he finished speaking, he began to vomit blood. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop it, and after a moment, he died of exhaustion. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang looked at each other, feeling that this episode was really a bit inexplicable, but after the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, they saw another person flying over from the horizon, waving his hand to greet them. It was the one who had just died. Wang Lu looked down and saw that the body of that person was still on the ground. "Huh, are you surprised that I am still alive?" "Very simple, because this is the demon spirit dream. A place where the demon race lives forever." Holy F***CK, you're multiplying by amitosis? Alright, apart from reproduction, what else? Don't you feel tired? After 2,000 years of fighting, don't you feel bored, painful, or tired of fighting? Looking at the tens of thousands of devilish beings on the demarcation line of the battlefield being eroded by the darkness, as if they were raw meat sent into a meat grinder. Wang Lu really didn't think that anyone could persist in such an environment for 2,000 years. Even the most belligerent warriors of Flaming Valley had to vent to their heart's content after the war, or stuff themselves with food or women. It was impossible to fight non-stop, let alone 2,000 years. Although the royal family of the demon realm had conquered the demon realm, as warriors, they were no better than those of Flaming Valley. They would feel fear, fatigue, and depression. This endless war was completely unreasonable. Oh, why do you two newcomers have so many questions? Have the tribal people become so wishy-washy? If you want to know why, just go to the battlefield with me and experience it. As he spoke, the high-tiered devilish lord took out a pair of sharp pitch-black spears from God knows where. Here, take it, and then rush with me later. As long as you experience the reincarnation of life and death once, you will know why we can persist for 2,000 years. Then he took the lead, directly crossing the large troop of the demon realm and rushing to the front of the battlefield. The strength of this high-tiered devilish lord was equivalent to that of a Shudon stage cultivator, and he had a variety of magical abilities. At this time, he was like a martial artist in the mortal world, charging forward purely with his physical strength. In the blink of an eye, he crossed the vast battlefield and arrived at the front. He roared loudly, raised his spear, and stabbed it into the darkness. Then he saw the black tide roll over him, and not even his bones were left. It was a soul-stirring but foolhardy charge. A moment later, the high-tiered devilish lord descended from the sky and looked at Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang with a puzzled expression. "You two didn't follow me?" Of course, they couldn't follow him. These demons had the ability to resurrect, but the two invaders absolutely couldn't. If they were swept by the black tide, they would definitely die without a burial place. However, while they were talking, many of the surrounding demons turned their eyes and curiously looked at these two people. Newcomers? It looks more and more strange. What happened to the people outside now? Did they marry humans? Their strength seems not bad, but their courage is not so good. Don't be afraid, when you really die once, you will know that the so-called fear and pain are all false, and will disappear with the reincarnation of life and death. What you have to do is to keep fighting. More and more demons surrounded the two of them and discussed. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang exchanged glances, knowing that if they let them continue to watch, they would definitely reveal their flaws. After all, these two demon recruits were exactly the same as humans. This setting was really abnormal. Only this group of demons, who had been fighting for 2,000 years, whose brains were full of tumors, could not find any problems for so long. So the two of them made a prompt decision, and without saying a word of nonsense, they each raised their spears and rushed forward. Then, when they were about to come into contact with the darkness, Ouyang Shang took the two of them underground. It should be safe, right? Hiding in the dark underground world, the two of them used their own means to restrain their breath and shield their perception. The strength of the two of them was not particularly high, but they were also confident that they could hide from the group of demon warriors with tumors in their brains outside. This kind of straightforward fighting that had lasted for 2,000 years had already greatly degraded their perception ability. Apart from fighting head-on, these people's other abilities had gradually disappeared, and there was nothing to be afraid of. This dream is very interesting. When the situation stabilized, Wang Lu said, with Fenrir as the imaginary enemy, the continuous bloody battle for 2,000 years. What is the use of it? The Fenrir here should have nothing to do with the real Fenrir. Ouyang Shang speculated, I think it's just a lure. This bloody battle is more like a collection ceremony, but what does the Demon King want to collect through it? Wang Lu said, it should be negative emotions. This demon spirit dream is in a sense the same as the new demon world. The demons of the new demon world were deprived of hatred, and the warriors of the demon spirit dream were deprived of pain, depression, fatigue, and so on, becoming more simple creatures. But this part of the emotions cannot completely disappear. They are just collected to make a weapon that can determine the fate of the universe. Black Tide? After all, Ouyang Shang had not been to the demon world and the new demon world, so his reaction was not as fast as Wang Lu's. But after being reminded, he quickly found the right direction. That's most likely the case. In this way, it can be linked to the known historical line. The black tide in the savage land did not come from the weak desert tribe, nor did it come from the demon wolf Fenrir, but from the demon spirit dream. So the next step is to find a way to destroy this dream? But with the scale of this dream, do you have any way? Wang Lu smiled. What a coincidence, there really is. Chapter 508. Destruction was always easier than construction, but for the demon spirit dream, a huge dream that lasted for 2,000 years, it was not easy to completely destroy it, at least for the two king pill cultivators, it was a fantasy. Even if the two exhausted the power of their primordial spirits, it was impossible to shake the foundation of this dream, but Wang Lu happened to have a tool in his hands that could reverse the situation. The demon jade that should have been consumed in the demon realm, the proof of the king of the demon realm. If it was the group of degenerates in the desert tribe, I wouldn't have much confidence in making the demon jade work. But in the demon spirit dream, all the demons will gradually restore their original appearance, and this setting is instead a trap of their own making. But directly destroying the dream with the demon jade is likely to cause the outbreak of the black tide, so be careful. Ouyang Shang reminded. Well, I understand. Before completely destroying the dream, we must first find a way to solve the black tide. I have a little experience in this regard. The root of the black tide is the negative emotions of the people in the dream. If we can provoke the two sides to kill each other, we can get twice the result with half the effort. Ouyang Shang asked, provoke the two sides to fight? What's the specific operation? There are two solutions. One is to break the concealment of the black tide in the demon spirit dream, so that the soldiers in the dream can clearly realize the existence of the black tide. After that, it is not difficult to disguise the black tide as a part of Fenrir or something else. But there are two problems with this method. One is whether the demon king will allow me to make such a big move in the demon spirit dream. Once he finds out, it is likely to detonate the black tide in advance. At that time, all our plans will be in vain. The second is to let the demons fight with the black tide, which will only accelerate their negative emotions such as pain and fatigue, and strengthen the black tide. It may not be able to achieve the effect of mutual destruction. Ouyang Shang nodded. The analysis is reasonable. Then what about the second plan? The second plan is relatively troublesome. The root of the black tide is negative emotions. If we can cut off this negative emotion, or even produce positive emotion, the black tide will naturally be weakened. Ouyang Shang nodded again. The theoretical analysis is good, but... He reached out and pointed to the top of his head, and a drop of black viscous liquid dripped not far from him. That was the result of the blood of the demons flowing like a river on the battlefield. After the blood seeped into the soil, it seeped all the way down for more than 100 meters. In such a tragic battlefield, if it weren't for the Demon King's dream-building technique that completely stripped away the negative emotions, no one would be able to hold on for long before collapsing, let alone the positive emotions. There's still a way. Wang Lu said, I don't know whether you've noticed it or not, but in this demon spirit dream, the negative emotions of demon fighters were completely stripped off after death and before rebirth. Ouyang Shang said, indeed, I noticed that when they were charging and breaking through the enemy lines, they could actually feel the pain even when they were seriously injured. I saw with my own eyes a demon who was cut in half at the waist screaming loudly on the ground for a long time. But not long after, when he came back to life, he was full of energy, as if he could not remember what had happened not long ago. Yes, that's the problem, Wang Lu said. Normally speaking, no matter how mentally tough a person is, after experiencing a serious injury and death, there will always be a period of mental malaise, but these demons are full of vigor as soon as they are resurrected. Obviously, all the negative emotions were stripped off after the resurrection. Figuring out these links gave me the opportunity to act. I want to let the demon spirit dream not only eliminate negative emotions, but also add positive emotions, that is, add positive energy. Add positive energy? For example? For example, Wang Lu took a breath, took out the demon jade, and stimulated it with his magical power. Then, with the power of the demon jade, he forcibly launched a dream-building technique. The fluctuations of the spell were not strong, which meant that its impact on the demon spirit dream was limited. However, there was a saying in this world that a small spell could also play the role of reversing the universe. It was just that Ouyang Shang had not thought of the specific operation method. Therefore, he was also very curious about the effect of Wang Lu's spell. When Wang Lu finished the spell, he pondered for a while, and then made a gesture with his hands, and a void projection lit up between his palms. There was a milky white light in the projection, showing the process of the demon warriors dying on the ground and resurrecting in the sky. When Wang Lu saw it, he couldn't help but be surprised. This is the dream-building technique? When did you learn to do this? Regarding the dream-building technique, due to the limited time, Wang Lu only briefly introduced it to Ouyang Shang. He never took out the scroll for him to read carefully, and the previous Ouyang Shang did not have much interest in it. His current swordsmanship was broad and profound, and he needed to spend a lot of energy to study it. How could he have the time to learn the dream-building technique? But the technique used by Ouyang Shang was recorded in the dream-building technique. Moreover, even Wang Lu hadn't looked at it seriously, so where did he learn it? Ouyang Shang said, "When I saw you unfold the scroll, the patterns on it changed, and there were a few small spells that didn't seem difficult. I casually wrote them down and unknowingly learned them." Casually wrote them down and unknowingly learned them? Wang Lu was extremely surprised, and felt that his three views were faintly refreshed. The previous generation's eldest senior brother's perception was simply heaven-defying. Just based on his ability to learn and comprehend, he was even better than him. Such a talent had fallen 100 years ago. No wonder the surviving elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall would never be able to forget this. If this guy continued to live, just as he was thinking, he heard Ouyang Shang's exclamation. "Damn, junior brother Wang Lu, is this what you mean by adding positive energy?" In the projection between Ouyang Shang's palms, there was a sacred milky white light, and hundreds of demon warriors were in it, their eyes lost. That was the middle station of their countless reincarnations. Every time the warriors died in battle, their souls would rise from the earth, enter the sky, and after a brief blank, they would be thrown back into the battlefield, constantly fighting. However, this time, after the soul rose, it was no longer a blank, and they saw an unprecedented scene. It was a pure and holy palace, carved out of pure and flawless white jade. In the middle of the palace was a long dining table, on which countless delicious dishes were piled up. There were golden and juicy top-grade steaks, colorful, round and jade-like fruits, and exquisite and unique dessert cakes. For the demon warriors who were born in desert tribes and were extremely short of resources, this was a magnificent scene that they had never seen even in their dreams. What shocked them even more was the rows of demon girls around the dining table. They were graceful, in the prime of their youth, with skin as smooth as water, and skin as red as blood. Their facial features were exquisite and did not lose the majesty of the royal family. Two small fangs slightly protruded from their mouths and pressed against their lips, looking very tempting. Moreover, unlike other royal families who always wore heavy armor, they only wore a layer of transparent gauze, the beauty of which was faintly discernible, making people's blood boil. If the dining table in the palace was shocking to the demon warriors, then these girls were simply thunder from the ninth heaven, blowing their souls away. Before they entered this bloody dreamland with their demon spirit bodies, they were all born in desert tribes, living a poor and difficult life for decades. There was no lack of opposite sex in the tribe, and they encouraged childbirth. However, due to limited conditions, most of the female demons appeared dry and haggard, and aged extremely quickly. If they only stayed in the tribe for the rest of their lives, without broader knowledge, perhaps they would not feel that there was any problem. But now that they had seen the real stunning demon beauties in the palace, they only felt that their outlook on life had collapsed. There are such beautiful women in the world. Just looking at them from a distance makes my blood boil. It seems that they are more attractive to me than men. Yes, I have never understood what is so wonderful about women. Now I realize that I have lived for thousands of years in vain. Hey, you are saying this in front of me, your close comrade who has accompanied you for 1,000 years? Where is your conscience? Sorry, I think I still like women. Well, in fact, I just realized that I do too. The scale of the palace was extremely magnificent, and the space inside became even more vast and boundless. On both sides of the long dining table, the seats stretched as far as the eye could see. The male warriors were slightly at a loss, but they were full of expectations as they sat down. Needless to say, the young girls approached them to serve them and enjoy the delicacies. The delicacies on the table were tempting, but how could they compare to the beautiful girls beside them? It was just that the demon warriors were still somewhat at a loss about the current situation, and did not dare to act presumptuously. They just followed the arrangement of the girls and slowly tasted the delicacies, but they were somewhat tasteless. But after a while, an even greater shock came. They saw some of the girls put down the food in their hands, lightly got under the dining table, kneeled down in front of the demon warriors, and then gently opened their cherry lips. The supreme enjoyment descended. The demon warriors on the dining table only felt a warm touch sweeping through their bodies like a tide, and penetrating into their bone marrow. Even their souls seemed to melt, and they felt like they were floating in the air. And just as they were about to die from ecstasy, the other serving girls also approached with a charming smile. They took off the veil on their bodies and expressed their intimacy in the most direct way, becoming presumptuous. Thus, a ridiculous show was staged in the hall. This is your positive energy? Underground, Ouyang Shang raised his hands to maintain the projection, and then looked at Wang Lu with a solemn expression. What's wrong? Wang Lu was baffled. You think it's not hot enough? I think it's good enough. According to the standards of the demon race, those girls are first-class beauties. When I was molding them, I also conveniently referred to a certain pair of fallen royal sisters of the demon race. I'm sure they will have a different kind of temptation. Chapter 509. Although Wang Lu's dream-building technique seemed absurd, it hit the nail on the head. A beautiful construction of the world after death suddenly made the demon warriors face death calmly. Anyway, every time they died, they would be resurrected, and everything would be perfect. Even the pain at the time of death would be completely stripped away. So, what was there to be afraid of? What's more, even if there was no pain, compared with the supreme enjoyment in the palace, the pain of death was nothing to be afraid of. Although the royal family of the demon realm could not completely ignore pain like the Flaming Valley warriors, their tolerance to pain was also extremely amazing. Wang Lu's positive energy soon produced an effect. The killing atmosphere on the battlefield of the demon spirit dream was almost swept away. The demon warriors descended from the sky, talking and laughing, and many of them still had a look of extreme joy on their faces. Then they casually picked up their weapons, prepared their spells, and threw themselves into the battlefield. In battle, they became braver than ever. Not only did they not fear death, but they also had a vague desire. Many people rushed into the darkness in a suicidal manner, using a completely uneconomical way to consume the energy of the invisible devil. Then, the long-awaited palace appeared in front of them. Such a wonderful thing, who would care about death? While these demons were high in joy, positive emotions were born and began to disintegrate the huge black tide. So, the black tide that had been growing for 2,000 years finally stopped growing and began to decline. In this regard, Ouyang Shang had to sigh after a long silence. What the F***ck, there were thousands of words that could not be said. Only this F***ck could express the emotion in Ouyang Shang's heart. When he analyzed that the black tide should be digested with positive energy, Ouyang Shang also realized that he should make a fuss in the sky. The content was nothing more than how to make them feel happy. But Ouyang Shang's first reaction was to instigate a sense of honor, a competitive mechanism, and so on. As a result, Wang Lu directly taught him a lesson with tactics. If you want people to face death calmly, desire may be more useful than honor. But after lamenting the advanced means of Wang Lu, he must face the next problem. For the black tide that had been accumulated for 2,000 years, the positive energy provided by tactics seemed to be huge, but in fact, it was only a drop in the bucket, and it could not last for too long. The novelty of delicacies and women would eventually fade. What would he do then? Don't worry, I have a full set of plans here. When food and lust lose their effects, it's time for this system to come into play. Hehe, it's fortunate that this is a dream, that's why I can ignore common sense and construct this thing. As Wang Lu spoke, he began to activate the demon jade again, constructing new content in the demon spirit dream. Oh. Ouyang Shang curiously switched the scene and saw that Wang Lu had built a new hall. In the middle of the hall, there was also a long table, but there was no more delicious food on the table. Instead, there were only strangely shaped rectangular plates. On the surface of the plates, gorgeous pictures could be reflected, and the pictures were of different styles. In addition, there was a board covered with many small squares on the table, and a small piece shaped like a mouse. What is this? Ouyang Shang was baffled. Internet cafe. What? It'll be very troublesome to explain in detail, but in short, you just need to know that this is a place that can give people endless enjoyment, and at the same time, cripple people. As Wang Lu spoke, he began to add more details in the hall. A bowl of steaming noodles and a cup of clear spring water were added to each seat. At the same time, the hall became filled with smoke, and it was full of a choking smell. It's done. After the system officially goes online, I will set the rules. Those who die due to decapitation can enjoy 1 hour of entertainment in the internet cafe, those who are smashed to pieces can enjoy 2 hours of entertainment, and those whose souls are scattered can enjoy 3 hours of entertainment. Those who are especially miserable will also provide overnight service. I believe that those demons will persevere and try their best to die inhumanely, and they will never get tired of it. It's really amazing. Ouyang Shang sighed deeply. But this system also has a weakness. If you receive a strong electric shock during the entertainment period, you may permanently lose interest in the internet cafe. But no one will randomly discharge electricity at this time, right? I believe that most people don't even know what this system does. Hey, that's the best. Next, as long as I add a few more instructions and completely solidify the system I designed, even the last demon king himself will not be able to save the situation, and can only sit and watch the black tide collapse day by day. Ouyang Shang nodded and did not speak again. Although Wang Lu painstakingly added these two major systems, and it did indeed turn the black tide from prosperity to decline, but how could the accumulation of 2,000 years be ordinary? Even if he stimulated more positive energy, without enough accumulation of time, it would be difficult to really shake the huge black tide. Using the dream-building technique to spy on the black tide, the scale was simply breathtaking. In contrast, Fenrir, who occupied half of the world in the demon spirit dream, seemed small compared to it. In fact, these demon warriors had already unknowingly created an even more terrifying opponent. It was just that they themselves were still ignorant of it. Perhaps compared to the new demon world mentioned by Wang Lu, the scale of the demon spirit dream was not worth mentioning. However, based on the current scale, perhaps no cultivator in the whole world could contend against the black tide with their own strength. At least, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League would have to go all out to suppress it. Thinking about it this way, in Wang Lu's timeline, it was not difficult to understand why Lingjian School was completely annihilated. Among the 5 uniques, Spirit Sword Sect was the weakest. If it was Royal Soldier Sect or 10,000 Art Sect, they might be able to barely suppress it, but Lingjian School would have to risk their lives. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shang suddenly felt a bit strange. According to Wang Lu, after the tragedy in the Savage Land, almost all the people in Lingjian School died, and only a few younger generation disciples survived. Then, how did they maintain the title of 5 uniques? It should be known that with the current strength of Lingjian School, it was barely hanging on the threshold of the 5 uniques. If all the elders died, it would immediately fall to the second rate. Although 150 years later, Lingjian School began to gradually rise, the sect produced many talented people, and the cultivation base of the elders became unfathomable, but how did they spend the 150 years in between? Although these problems were only minor details in the current situation, since he had thought of them, he might as well spend some time to think about them. However, just as Ouyang Shang started to think, he suddenly heard Wang Lu groan, his whole body trembled, and his 7 orifices overflowed with blood. "Damn it, I've gone too far." Upon hearing this, Ouyang Shang didn't ask any more questions. He immediately used the earth escape technique and sank deeper into the ground. It only took him a moment to figure out the situation. When Wang Lu said that he had gone too far, he must have been discovered by the last Demon King when he was consolidating the order, and the strength of the backlash was beyond his expectation, which put him in an extremely disadvantageous situation. So much so that he couldn't even use the dream-building technique to withdraw from the demon spirit dream. Because, if he had the time to curse, he should first think of a way to withdraw from this dangerous place. Wang Lu had never been such a reckless person. He dared to be so bold in the demon spirit dream, making such a big fuss, of course, because he had something to rely on, including the magical demon Jade, as well as the teammates around him. It was because Ouyang Shang was also around that he could safely and boldly take risks. At the same time, once there was an accident, Ouyang Shang must be able to make up for it in time. The implication of that foul language was actually for Ouyang Shang to take action. And Ouyang Shang did not fail to live up to his expectation. His reaction was fast, without the slightest delay. He used his earth escape technique to travel hundreds of miles in a flash. In a flash, Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu had already sunk to an unknown depth underground. At the same time, the two of them could vaguely feel that there was a huge shadow above their heads, which completely engulfed the vast space. That was close. After Ouyang Shang finished, he began to try to use the new dream-building technique. It was also a small trick that he happened to see in the scroll, so he casually understood it and used it to get out of the dream. But as soon as Ouyang Shang had the idea, he was stopped by Wang Lu. "It's useless, the other party has blocked the dream. Acting rashly will only expose our position. In other words, if we don't act rashly." Wang Lu barely managed to catch his breath at this time. He is not omnipotent in the dream. He is just the creator and manager of the dream, not the absolute ruler. With the demon Jade, I should have been able to fight for higher authority than him. Unfortunately, in the past 2,000 years, he has made new breakthroughs in the dream-building technique and caught me off guard. But now that his management authority has been blown up by me, there is finally room for breathing. Ouyang Shang pondered, if his ability in the dream is limited to what he has just shown, there is indeed room for mediation. At least my earth escape technique can run fast enough, he can't catch up with me. Thinking of the escape technique of 100 miles in a flash, Wang Lu understood more why when Ouyang Shang realized that the situation had changed, his first reaction was to escape into the ground instead of other places. When his earth escape technique was fully displayed, it was simply heaven-defying. Whether it was the speed of reaction or movement, it had completely exceeded the limit of the King Pill cultivators. Perhaps even a Yuanying stage cultivator would find it difficult to have his terrifying explosive power. It was as if the whole earth was protecting him. "Well, I have been fated with the earth since I was a child," Ouyang Shang simply explained. Although it is not an earth spirit root, when practicing the 5 elements of magic, the effect of earth magic is always particularly good. Wang Lu smiled and said, "So why don't you change your name to Ouyang Di? We can be considered a couple. In short, I will do my best to buy time for you. As for how to break through the other party's blockade and get out of the demon spirit dream." Wang Lu took a deep breath. "Leave it to me. If force doesn't work, I still have a lot of tricks." With that, he once again took out the demon Jade. The Jade contained a chaotic red color, like a hungry beast. Chapter 510. In terms of the comprehension ability of the dream-building technique, Ouyang Shang was actually better, but the current situation did not allow Ouyang Shang to divert his attention to study the dream-building technique, because the only thing that could delay time in the demon spirit dream was his earth escape technique, and he had to use the earth escape technique with all his strength. Moreover, Wang Lu had come into contact with the dream-building technique earlier and had a deeper understanding of it. He also had the 5 spirit blood crown jade in his hand, so the heavy responsibility of using the dream-building technique to fight against the Demon King fell on him. Of course, it was not easy to break the Demon King's dream blockade. Wang Lu immersed his mind in the dream-building technique, using the demon jade to strengthen the effect of the dream-building technique, and constantly worked hard to tear apart the barrier of the dream space. During this time, the last Demon King was in hot pursuit, and the darkness continued to spread through the earth. Every time it exploded, it would engulf everything within a radius of several miles, and this explosion came almost without warning. Every time, Ouyang Shang had to rely on his intuition to react at the critical moment, and then use the earth escape technique to travel 100 miles in an instant to barely dodge it. Every dodge was extremely difficult. If there was a third party watching the battle, they would definitely think that Ouyang Shang would be caught in less than 10 dodges, because the difference in strength between the two sides was too obvious. It was a huge gap that no genius or fortuitous encounter could bridge. However, until the 100th dodge, Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu were still alive and kicking, and had not been engulfed by the darkness. Although Ouyang Shang was sweating profusely, his mana fluctuations were still at their peak, even stronger than when the battle began. Ouyang Shang actually became stronger the more he fought, and his perception of the explosion of darkness became more and more acute. Every time he used the earth escape technique, he was even more timely, and after the 100th dodge, he was even more relaxed. He even had the leisure to care about what was happening on the other side. How is the situation? I still need time. Don't worry, time. I have as much time as I want. As he said this, Ouyang Shang once again used the mana in his body to connect with the earth, fusing himself and Wang Lu with the earth, and instantly appeared 100 miles away. The next moment, the darkness exploded, and a heavy muffled sound came from the depths of the earth. It was the sound of soil and rocks colliding after everything in the large space was engulfed. Separated by a thick layer of earth, the sound was vague and hazy, but Ouyang Shang felt his heart become heavy. Such shocking destructive power, but what level was that Demon King of the last generation? At this time, Wang Lu had just finished a stage of his work. He let out a long sigh and said, to be able to descend upon the Devil Realm, of course, he must be a top expert of the Devil Realm. But if he really is a peak expert, yes, if a body integration stage perfected Lord was here, we would have died long ago. No matter how amazing your earth escape technique is, it would be useless. Traveling 100 miles in the blink of an eye was indeed an amazing ability, for Taoist King Pill. If it was a conjoint body perfected Lord, even if he did not rely on immortal spells or divine powers, he would be able to achieve the same thing just by relying on his well-tempered body. Coupled with the difference in the quality of their essence souls, it was impossible for Ouyang Shang to escape. So there are a few possibilities. First, the Devil Realm 2000 years ago was already too weak to withstand a single blow. The so-called peak powerhouses were only at the level of nascent soul or soul formation. Secondly, His Majesty the Demon King had been suppressed by Fenrir for 2000 years and had long been squeezed dry. His strength was not even 100%. Thirdly, he was in a deep sleep when I woke him up, and he hasn't fully woken up yet. Ouyang Shang sighed. Junior brother Wang, why don't you just say 4? Wang Lu smiled. Fourthly, he deliberately let us down to make us lower our guard. Is that so? Ouyang Shang tilted his head, and then once again merged with the earth, dodging the devouring darkness. Although he was calm, it was still thrilling. Then he really hid it well. If he didn't do that, how could he deceive the two of us? For what? Wang Lu waved the demon jade in his hand. Of course it's for this. Apart from this, what else could the two Taoist King Pill have that is worth His Majesty the Demon King wasting his energy on? That makes sense. The Devil Realm's King's proof has now fallen into the hands of a human. If I were the Demon King, I would definitely not be willing. Moreover, you could constantly cause trouble for him in the demon spirit dream with the demon jade, so you are obviously a thorn in his side. Snatching the demon jade is the top priority. But he can't be sure that I have done something to the demon jade, so he didn't act rashly. He is waiting for me to think that I am safe, thinking that his attention is on you, so he can rest assured and use the demon jade to start the second stage of the dream building technique. At that time, he can quickly snatch the demon jade. At that time, senior brother Ouyang, no matter how sharp your intuition is, after adapting to his previous rhythm, it will be difficult to quickly change the rhythm and keep up with the reaction. Ouyang Shang smiled bitterly. With the means of a mere Taoist King Pill, it is not easy for me to keep up with this rhythm, okay? And listening to you, it seems that to break the dream blockade, we must use the demon jade, and as long as we use the demon jade, it will leave a flaw for him to snatch it? So next, I will have to trouble you to do me a favor. Let's really do something to the demon jade for him to see. As soon as the demon jade leaves my control, destroy it immediately. Destroy it. Well, we can't get it back after it is taken away anyway, so it is better to destroy it together. Although this thing is the condensation of the demon world's law, it is not indestructible. I happen to know several ways to destroy it, such as. With that, Wang Lu handed the demon jade to Ouyang Shang and was about to demonstrate the method to destroy it. However, at this time, a dark shadow suddenly flashed out. Its speed was simply incredible, completely beyond the reaction limit of Taoist King Pill. However, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang reacted in advance as if they had foreseen it. One of them launched his non-phase sword defense, while the other launched his earth escape technique, which was several times more effective than before. Both of them managed to block the Demon King's all-out attack. In the blink of an eye, the two appeared in the depths of the ground hundreds of miles away. Ouyang Shang's face was pale and his whole body was trembling. Wang Lu was bleeding from his 7 orifices. His right hand, which was holding the sword, was strangely twisted from the elbow. His non-phase sword bone had been impressively broken. However, compared to the achievement of escaping from death, these injuries were not worth mentioning. Especially in the momentary exchange of blows just now, the two of them had more or less figured out each other's details. The other party was indeed far above the two of them, but at this moment, he was also burdened with a strong restriction, so he did not dare to use 90% of his ability. Just now, he had to hold back halfway, not daring to go all out. Therefore, in the final analysis, the other party had nothing to be afraid of. At the same time, the Demon King, who had been hiding behind the scenes, also changed his strategy and walked to the front of the stage. What a wonderful performance! The fluent pronunciation of the common language of the 9 regions, coupled with the young and gentle voice, swept away the previous life and death atmosphere. A demon wearing a red cloak and a black armor walked along the dark passage in front of the two of them. His 2 scarlet pupils were like burning flames, which reflected his face. Sure enough, it was the same as what they had seen in the demon world. This last Demon King, who had ruled the demon world 2,000 years ago, was an ordinary young demon who looked like a child. However, the aura of a monarch descending upon the world was overwhelming. The Demon King sighed with emotion. After 2,000 years in the human world, I can't believe that there are so many rare talents in 9 regions. They are even better than the elites in the Great War of Immortals and Demons. It's really enviable. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu frowned and said, "That's strange. How do you know about the Second Great War of Immortals and Demons? According to his previous understanding of the Demon King, he should still be in the demon world during the Second Great War of Immortals and Demons. Using the wreckage of the Eternal Tree as the foundation, he tried to turn the tide and calm the chaos of the demon world. Until all the efforts failed, he would lead the survivors to build a new demon world. During this period, those demon world creatures, who were out of their reach and involved in the chaos of the law, entered the 9 regions along the space passage, triggering the Second Great War of Immortals and Demons. The Demon King's entry into 9 regions should be after the construction of the new demon world was completed. However, listening to his words, it seemed that there was something hidden about the matter of that year. Wang Lu was thinking about how to find a way to get information from the other party's mouth, but then he saw the Demon King chuckle. Isn't the reason very simple? More than 2,000 years ago, how could those irrational mobs turn the 9 regions upside down? Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang sucked in a mouthful of cold air at the same time. Did this guy admit that the Great War of Immortals and Demons 2,000 years ago was planned by him? At least, he was deeply involved in it. This was quite different from the statement of the later Demon King. Wang Lu didn't think that the Demon King's sisters had the need to deliberately deceive him. In other words, they were also kept in the dark by the former Demon King? But, what was the point of doing this? However, just as he thought of this, he saw another shadow flashed in front of him. The Demon King actually made his move again. This time, Ouyang Shang's reaction was very fast, but Wang Lu was slightly slower by half a beat. Fortunately, non-phase method was really marvelous. Even if the cultivator himself was absent-minded, his subconscious defense was still watertight, and he even prepared in advance. After a collision and an escape through the earth, hundreds of miles away, the 2 young cultivators appeared. Although their injuries were more severe, they still managed to withstand a round. Amazing! The seemingly young Demon King followed them in the dark. This time, you guys really exceeded my expectation. Wang Lu coughed up blood softly and sneered, "You're also beyond my expectation. Tell me honestly, what exactly are you?" With that, the demon jade in his hand bloomed with dazzling red brilliance. You didn't notice it, did you? Just now, when we fought, I used the demon jade to lightly illuminate you. Although there's no law blessing, it's impossible for any demon to be indifferent to the illumination of the proof of the king. And you? Are you really a demon? Wang Lu finally sorted out his thoughts and voiced out his doubts. Looking at the several major events that you've experienced, there are too many doubtful points in your actions. You're not a demon, right? Ha ha ha. The young Demon King burst into laughter. Do you want to know? Knock me down and I will naturally tell you. Darkness shrouded them again. Chapter 5:11. In the underground world of the demon spirit dream, the cruel pursuit continued. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang fled in the front while the Demon King chased after them. As Wang Lu raised the key question, the temporarily maintained communication channel between the 2 sides was instantly severed. The Demon King was no longer interested in talking to them and instead went all out to pursue them. This time, the pursuit became thrilling, because the Demon King's suppression of his own power became smaller and smaller. His method of attack became more and more strange and varied, and the power of the eruption of darkness became more and more powerful. Many times, Ouyang Shang really relied on a bit of luck to take Wang Lu to avoid the eruption of darkness. With the continuous increase of the Demon King's attack power, Wang Lu could no longer use his non-phase sword to fight for a buffer. That would be a dead end. Therefore, all the pressure was on Ouyang Shang. The battle in the underground world became a stage for the Demon King and Ouyang Shang to fight. And Ouyang Shang really withstood the pressure. Whether it was the eruption or the luck, he was always able to avoid the Demon King's pursuit. After a few rounds, the Demon King suddenly stopped. He looked at Ouyang Shang seriously with a bit of playfulness in his eyes. "Oh. It turns out that you have a lot of luck on your body. The whole earth is blessing you. No wonder you're so slippery. Unfortunately." Before he finished his words, Ouyang Shang felt his vision go black. His keen intuition continued to warn him that a life-and-death crisis was coming, but he had no way to deal with it. On the other side, Wang Lu also felt that a crisis was coming. However, in this desperate situation, a trace of inspiration burst out from him. The moment before the Demon King made his move, Wang Lu suddenly raised the Demon Jade above his head. He was not trying to trade the Demon Jade for his own life, but rather to stimulate the power within it, making it burst out with an unprecedentedly strong light. When the light lit up, the Demon King's complexion suddenly changed. He immediately cancelled the magic that was aimed at Ouyang Shang and turned his attention to Wang Lu. However, he was still a step too late. The momentary delay allowed the Demon Jade in Wang Lu's hand to burst out smoothly. The Demon King helplessly put down his hand. He was quite surprised by this little fellow's reaction speed and agility. The other party had seen through the predicament he was facing. The Demon King was suppressed by the demonic wolf Fenrir. Now the battle in the dream seemed to be unlimited, but once it was detected by Fenrir. Hey, this demon spirit dream could be hidden from her for 2,000 years because she knew nothing about the dream building technique before. Beside him, a group of junior brothers and sisters also put on a serious face. Several of them even brandished their flying swords. Their killing intent was so thick that it was like a substance, which firmly sealed the entrance of the tent. Outside the tent, there was an endless hubbub. Quickly release the Great Elder. Release him immediately. Don't think that you can do whatever you want. Listening to the roar outside the tent, the pacing cultivator sighed again. Alas, Big Brother and the others are really. They didn't explain anything in advance, but now they left me such a mess. Turning his head back, he saw that in the middle of the tent, the great elder of the desert tribe had fallen to the ground, unconscious. Although his life was not in danger, his condition was very bad. It was obvious that he had been killed by someone. The culprit was not far away, lying not far from the great elder. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were lying side by side, also unconscious. Not long ago, a demon girl who was responsible for serving the great elder in the desert tribe wanted to go in and clean up the tableware for the great elder's lunch. However, when she lifted the curtain, she saw the three unconscious people. Among them, the great elder had a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth, which showed that he had suffered a serious injury. The girl screamed in horror, which alarmed half of the oasis. The first to arrive were the cultivators of the Lingjian school. Before the other angry demons rushed into the tent, they first entered the tent and blocked everything. Although they didn't know what was going on, they knew that Big Brother and the others were facing a special situation or dealing with a difficult problem. At this time, they must not allow outsiders to enter and disturb them. Therefore, they would rather fall out with the demon race and insist on staying in the tent to protect Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang. As for the great elder of the demon race, he was actually just an unimportant person, but no one was sure how much he had to do with Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang's coma. At this time, they could only try to maintain the scene and not add variables. This was naturally intolerable to the demon race, but the huge gap in strength made them unable to take further action. They could only protest angrily outside the tent. Although the human cultivators in the tent were still young and immature, the flying swords in their hands were really sharp. Although they had never really clashed, they knew that if they really fought, the desert tribe would pay an extremely painful price. And this matter was indeed very strange. The great elder and the two most outstanding human cultivators fainted in the tent at the same time. Could it be that it was the curse of the invisible devil? Thinking of this, the demon race did not dare to act rashly. However, when he looked around, everyone's gaze towards Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang, including Feng Yin, had subtly changed. Hey, can you guys not be like this? Chapter 5:12. In the desert oasis, the contradiction was constantly brewing and intensifying. The people in the tent were struggling to figure out the truth, trying to find a way out of the current predicament. For this reason, even the reputation and integrity of their big brother and senior brother Wang Lu could be ignored. Similarly, for the people outside the tent, as long as they could rescue the Great Elder, they were willing to sacrifice many things. Sacrificing one's life was the simplest way. In fact, during the confrontation between the two sides, there were many warriors who were hot-blooded and intended to use their own blood to prove the integrity of the desert tribe, but fortunately, the old guys in the tribe stopped them. The enemy was strong while they were weak. The situation forced the desert tribe to not be hot-blooded. It was easy for a few of them to rush in and commit suicide, but if they provoked the anger of the other side, who could stop them with the current combat power of the desert tribe? Therefore, after a long time, the demons outside the tent were still in the stage of protest. Although the wording was gradually getting stronger, it had no essential impact. Humans. Is this the way you self-proclaimed righteous sects do things? We treat you with sincerity, and even saved the lives of both of you, but you are ruthless towards the Great Elder. You are simply heartless. Aren't you afraid that when you ascend to the heavenly tribulation, your soul will fly away and scatter? Release the Great Elder, and we can let bygones be bygones. The people in the tent were already tired of hearing such protests. After a while, someone simply set up a soundproof technique at the entrance, and it suddenly became quiet. And a quiet environment was indeed more conducive to people's thinking. Do you think we should call the others? Others? What do you mean? Lin Wan looked at Feng Yin, who suddenly put forward a suggestion. I mean those people in Blessed Fountain. Didn't Big Brother previously establish a base at Blessed Fountain? There should be our 3 teams there, and senior sister Kai Xia is also there. If she can come, perhaps there will be a way. Ask for help from Blessed Fountain? Lin Wan murmured, but isn't Blessed Fountain fighting with the Flood Dragon in the final battle? It's impossible to take out manpower, right? Feng Yin said, I just communicated with Blessed Fountain not long ago. Their progress is very smooth. Yesterday, they fought a fierce battle with the Flood Dragon and won a great victory. The others were stunned when they heard this. Now that Blessed Fountain has completely entered the harvesting rhythm, it doesn't matter if there is one less or one more person. What's more, the Blessed Fountain base was originally just a frontier base. After the completion of the Blessed Fountain strategy, it was impossible for all 3 teams to stay at Blessed Fountain. The elders of the desert tribe carefully inquired about the situation in the tent and felt that the 3 of them were poisoned by the sand, so they were unconscious, and then, they sent them here. Suspecting that the 3 of them were poisoned by the sand, they sent the poison-extracting doctors. The unfolding of this plot was really delightful. Whether Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were poisoned by the sand or not, the people present couldn't tell. This sand was invisible and colorless, and only these demons could accurately identify it. Logically speaking, how could the 3 of them be poisoned by the sand in the Oasis City for no reason? If this city was not safe, these demons would have long been extinct. Therefore, the possibility of them being poisoned by the sand was not great. This was also the reason why they kept the demons outside the tent from the beginning. However, the current situation was that, after so long, the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect couldn't determine the crux of the problem, of course, because none of them had heard of the existence of dream-building technique. Thus, when the desert demons proposed the possibility of the sand poison, they could no longer deny it. Moreover, the desert demons also calmly proposed, "If you don't believe us, it doesn't matter, but at least let us save our tribe's elder." This request was reasonable and difficult to refuse. However, for Zhang Sheng and Wang Chenai, if they wanted to agree to it, they really needed a psychological struggle. The method of poison extracting doctors was well known. For the desert tribe, this was a necessity for survival, but for these two young people with shallow experience. Are there no other poison extracting doctors? Wang Chenai smiled bitterly and gestured with sign language. The demon girl seriously responded, "Among the tribe's doctors, only the two of us are qualified to extract the poison for the great elder. Damn it, why do we need to pay attention to the qualification for this thing? I'm sorry, if there's nothing else, we have to extract the poison for the great elder as soon as possible." The girl's look was particularly serious. Wang Chenai was speechless. He turned his head to look at Zhang Sheng and saw that his junior brother's complexion was livid, but he didn't say a word. He just let his sweetheart come closer to the great elder. Wang Chenai could not help but sigh with emotion. Junior brother Zhang Sheng was indeed worthy to be a cultivator of emotion sword. If he loved a person, he would love her everything. He could even disregard the cuckoldry on his head. This kind of breadth of mind was better not to imitate. The several other cultivators of spirit sword sect in the tent also sighed with emotion. They were afraid that the road of love of Zhang Sheng would be full of troubles, so they didn't care much about the two poison-extracting doctors. At this time, a trace of black light suddenly appeared in the eyes of one of the demon girls. And she was only a few steps away from Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang. Chapter 5:13. The change of the poison-extracting doctor only lasted for a short moment. The black color in his pupils flashed away, and his slightly stiff movements quickly returned to normal. Regarding this subtle change, 2 or 3 people in the room noticed it, but they didn't care too much. They just moved a few steps and stood between the poison-extracting doctor and the 2 senior brothers. The 2 poison-extracting doctors turned a blind eye to this and stood in front of the great elder. Then, they took off their clothes, revealing 2 smooth and delicate naked bodies, preparing for the next poison extraction. The male cultivators of the Lingjian school turned their heads one after another. Wang Chenai and Zhang Sheng, who were at the door, were even more depressed. They simply walked to the corner of the tent and closed their eyes to meditate, not asking anything. However, at this moment, Wang Wu suddenly stood up and stepped forward to stop the 2 demon girls. "Wait a minute." The 2 girls looked at her in surprise and tried to explain with their hands, but Wang Wu didn't look at them at all. She just turned her head and asked Feng Yin strangely, "Why did you let them in?" Feng Yin said, "They are here to save their own family." Wang Wu was even more puzzled, "Then hand over the elder. What's the use of keeping him here?" Feng Yin was stunned, and then explained, "We can't guarantee that the elder has nothing to do with the 2 senior brothers' coma. Before the truth is revealed, it's best to keep the scene unchanged. This is what the eldest senior brother told us before." Wang Wu said, "That's right, the eldest senior brother did say that the truth of the matter is not clear, so we should try our best to keep the scene unchanged, so we must not let outsiders in, let alone the 2 of them. You. The eldest senior brother has always had high hopes for you, and even when he is not here, you are the leader, but is this how you do things?" Feng Yin's mind was confused by Wang Wu's questioning. In his impression, junior sister Wang Wu had never been so aggressive. No, she had never even spoken so loudly. Wang Wu was considered to be at the bottom of the golden generation due to her lack of aptitude. If it weren't for her extraordinary efforts and the eldest senior brother's special treatment, she wouldn't even have the qualifications to be ranked in the golden generation. And she had always been self-aware. Other than cultivation, it was cultivation. In the golden generation, she was like a transparent person, but now, junior sister Wang Wu, what are you trying to say? As an elite talent second only to a handful of people in the middle sequence of the golden generation, when had Feng Yin ever been pointed at and questioned like this? But he also knew that Wang Wu wasn't accusing him for no reason. No matter what, he had to listen to her reason. Wang Wu frowned even more. Do you still need to ask? They are the poison-extracting physicians of the devil race. And then? The dispute between the two quickly attracted the attention of others, especially Wang Chenai and Zhang Sheng, who stood up angrily and cast a stern look at them. They didn't know much about Wang Wu, and their friendship with each other was mediocre. Even because of her cultivation base, they were quite critical of her being ranked in the golden generation. At this time, when they heard her openly accusing the two poison-extracting physicians, their hearts were even more indignant. Wang Wu turned a blind eye to this. When she was on the mountain, she was indifferent to the various gazes of her fellow disciples. It wasn't that she was self-aware, she just didn't care. And at this moment, she also didn't care how other people thought of her. She just wanted to say what should be said. As for how they would judge later, it had nothing to do with her. They are poison-extracting physicians, and they remove the sand poison for the people of the tribe by mating. All of us have heard of this, right? Wang Chenai said, yes, we all know, so what? You want to say that they... Wang Wu glanced at him, and her clear and cold eyes made Wang Chenai, whose cultivation base was higher than hers, speechless for a moment. I want to say, haven't you ever thought that when they remove the sand poison for others, where is the extracted sand poison? While everyone was stunned speechless, Wang Wu continued, the sand poison is in their bodies, and as the best poison-extracting physicians in the tribe, they have accumulated the most sand poison. In my opinion, they are no different from weapons full of poison. You, actually let them come in and let them get close to the two senior brothers? Isn't it too serious? Wang Chenai argued, it shouldn't be that dangerous, right? Haven't they always been living well in the tribe? Isn't it enough that their living place is independent of other people's gathering area? Moreover, the essence of the sand poison is a curse, and since it's a curse, in theory, it can be induced by people. Even the poison-extracting physicians can't help it. Wang Chenai felt that his throat became even drier, and he could hardly speak, but, this is just your guess. Wang Wu nodded, it's just a guess, so if you still want to gamble, I can't do anything about it. But as long as I'm here, I will never allow them to move freely here. After saying that, she ignored the others and directly stepped forward to push the two poison-extracting physicians away, ignoring the two girls who were desperately gesturing to explain that they had no malicious intent. At the same time, she also ignored that Feng Yin and others had not fully digested what she had just said, and had not expressed their support for her point of view. Wang Wu's thinking was very simple. What should be said had been said, and what should be done had been done as much as possible. If Feng Yin and others were really stubborn and insisted on doing things against her way of thinking, she could do nothing about it. At worst, the brothers and sisters would have a fight. Of course, she was no match for them, but she had done what she could. If she really couldn't do it, it had nothing to do with her. Even if her senior brother came back, she couldn't be blamed. If she could, she really didn't want to take the initiative to do these things. She didn't have the cultivation aptitude of Feng Yin, Zhang Sheng, and others. Every inch of time was extremely precious, and she wished she could use it all to cultivate. As for the other things, she would leave them to the senior brothers and sisters who had spare energy to do them. But, why were they so stupid? They couldn't even see through such a simple plot. In fact, at this time, Wang Wu was somewhat too harsh on Feng Yin and others. As the younger disciples of the Lingjian school, they had been cultivating in seclusion in the mountains all year round, and had very little experience. Usually, once they encountered a difficult and complicated disease, it was mostly Big Brother Ouyang Shang who would come forward and handle the situation. The others had almost no experience in taking charge of things alone. This was the biggest reason why the sect decided to send them to the Savage Land for the management trainee program. If everyone was as good as Ouyang Shang, there would be no need for any training. At this time, suddenly encountering an unexpected situation in the demon tribe, Feng Yin and others inevitably became impatient and couldn't maintain their calm. Even though they forced themselves to calm down with their immortal heart cultivation base, many details of thinking were still slow. Only a person like Wang Wu, who was naturally indifferent, would be completely unaffected by the environment and think one step ahead of others. But it was only this step. Wang Wu saw the risks of the two poison-extracting physicians, so she took the initiative to come forward and try to expel them from the tent. At this time, she ignored one point. Among the group of senior and junior brothers and sisters, her cultivation base was at the bottom, so what qualifications did she have to rush to the front? The next moment, the eyes of the poison-extracting physician girl closest to her completely turned black, and a black aura soared up to the sky. The strong power deterred everyone on the spot. Caught off guard, even Feng Yin let out a muffled groan. He felt his vision blur, and his 5 senses were all polluted. For a moment, he couldn't exert any strength at all and even felt drowsy. Wang Wu was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Although she was fully prepared, she had already raised the power of her Shidon to the peak when she was talking and pacing, and the middle-grade magic weapon given to her by the sect was already in front of her in advance. However, the moment the pitch-black demonic flames rose, she was directly sent flying. Her body flew straight out of the tent, tumbling all the way, smashing through a few thick walls of the city before stopping in the midst of the rubble. However, she was already unconscious, and it was unknown whether she was dead or alive. Ah Qing! What are you doing? Wang Chenai was horrified. He rushed toward the demon girl who suddenly erupted her power. His cultivation base was only above average among the group, but in a moment of desperation, he burst out his potential and recovered faster than Feng Yin. During the process of rushing, the thunder-flying sword, which he was used to, had already flown out of his sleeve and was held in his hand. More than 10 talismans with different functions were refined by his primordial spirit, and they surrounded his body. In an instant, he was ready to fight. In front of him, the demon girl, Ah Qing, who had just been in love, stared at him with her dark pupils and a faint smile. Don't go over. Feng Yin transmitted his voice through primordial spirit and burst out with a roar, stopping Wang Chenai in time. Protect the 2 senior brothers, and don't worry about anything else. Under this shocking change, Feng Yin recovered his rationality. The sudden eruption of the demon girl was obviously controlled by someone behind the scenes. The other party was definitely not plotting against them, but the unconscious Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu. Therefore, the most important thing at the moment was to watch over the 2 of them. They didn't know much about the demon race and the sand poison, so it was difficult to judge the strength of the other party in a short period of time. They could only guess that the other party should be about the same as them. Otherwise, there was no need to disguise and hide, and they could just directly crush them, and in the case of unknown details, caution was the most important quality. Perhaps if Ouyang Shang was here, he would have enough courage and boldness to gamble in a radical way, but Feng Yin didn't dare. He had self-awareness. Zhang Sheng, Wang Chenai, you 2 go save junior sister Wang Wu, the others, and I will set up the array. Protect the 2 senior brothers. Zhang Sheng and Wang Chenai were not weak, but at this time, the opponent was their lover. With their young temperament, it was inevitable that they would be affected, especially Zhang Sheng, who was an emotion sword cultivator. It was hard to say what he would do, so it was better to send him away. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve, which was good for everyone. Zhang Sheng silently nodded to show that he accepted this order, but his eyes never left his beloved. Wang Qinye's lover, Qing, had already transformed, and the demon girl beside her also had her pupils covered in darkness, and was only one step away from transforming. Chapter 5:14. The change in the tent has been noticed by the people outside. When Wang Wu was sent flying, she dragged down a small half of the tent, and the situation inside was clearly visible. The sudden outbreak of the two poison-extracting physicians shocked everyone. Before this, it was true that because of the sand poison, the poison-extracting physicians lived in seclusion in the city, but there had never been a poison outbreak. If this had happened earlier, the desert tribe would not have let the poison-extracting physicians live so close to them. What does that invisible devil want to do? There was a lot of discussion among the crowd, and their anger quickly brewed. In their view, this situation was undoubtedly a trick of the invisible devil, trying to use the sand poison to divide the relationship between the human cultivators and the desert tribe. However, knowing was knowing, there was no solution at all. The wisest person in the tribe was now lying in the tent. The other elders had discussed for a long time, and the idea they came up with was nothing more than to send the poison-extracting physicians in. As a result, as soon as they went in, something happened. Right now, the group of elders was like a group of dragons without a leader, completely in a state of confusion. No one could make a decision at all. However, there were many enthusiastic demons outside the tent who loudly gave advice to the human cultivators inside: splash them with cold water. Let them calm down. Yes, they are born with resistance to the sand poison. As long as they wake up, it will be fine. There were also some who pleaded with the human cultivators not to kill them. Please don't hurt them, they are only temporarily controlled by the invisible devil, they don't mean to hurt you. For a time, hundreds of people had their own opinions, and the outside of the tent was in a mess. However, the people inside the tent had no intention to pay attention to the chaos outside. The outbreak of the two poison-extracting physicians brought a heavier and heavier sense of oppression. Although they never made their move, as the sand poison warehouse, how could Feng Yin and the others dare to take it lightly? All kinds of purification and defensive spells that they learned in the mountain for decades were cast out, for fear that the other party would release the colorless and odorless sand poison when they were unprepared. Whether these defensive spells could work or not was completely unknown. The spiritual pressure made the cultivators consume their magical power faster. In the confrontation between the two sides, the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect were undoubtedly in a passive position. However, Feng Yin was indifferent to this. He just sat in the array, motionless like a mountain. They could afford to stall for time, because it was clear that the demons were rushing for time. They sent poison-extracting physicians as human bombs. This was not an upright tactic. It was more like a helpless act of stealing chickens. Moreover, after junior sister Wang Wu discovered the danger, she didn't immediately turn against them. Instead, she just tried to drive them out. It was them who made the first move, resulting in the current standoff. This undoubtedly meant that they had to get the results as soon as possible. They couldn't afford to delay. Since the other party couldn't afford to delay, then they had to do their best to delay. Very smart. Unfortunately, there's no stage for you to display your cleverness today. Step down, ants. Vaguely, Feng Yin seemed to hear someone sneer. The next moment, one of the two poison-extracting physicians suddenly showed a painful look. He bent down and covered his mouth with both hands, but the black blood still gushed out uncontrollably. At the same time, the noise outside the tent suddenly quieted down. Looking around, he saw hundreds of desert demons gathered outside. Most of them showed an extremely painful expression, and thick black blood overflowed from their 7 orifices. This blood didn't cause the loss of vitality. On the contrary, Feng Yin, who was in the center of the defensive array, could clearly sense that the pressure from outside the tent was rapidly increasing. Those demons who were exhausted under the pressure of the invisible demons were injected with new strength. There was even a black gust of wind blowing outside the tent. "Senior brother Feng Yin," Lin Wan said with some uneasiness. "Don't panic." How could Feng Yin not see that the situation was rapidly deteriorating, but at this moment, there was no better choice than to defend. They couldn't leave. The black blood overflowing from the 7 orifices of the demons continued to flow, solidifying and hardening on the surface of their bodies. After a while, it formed a whole set of rough but unusually solid heavy armor. At the same time, the king's aura that once deterred many races in the demon realm gradually returned. In the blink of an eye, the desert tribes, which were still weak, had become a powerful force that could not be underestimated. The strong pressure made Feng Yin and others not dare to act rashly. Among the hundreds of demons outside the tent, there were hundreds whose strength was above the Shudan stage. In the past, they were exhausted, and their realm was not a threat, but now, it was soul-stirring. Now I completely believe that they are all descendants of the royal family of the demon realm. Feng Yin frowned and whispered to himself, but is this atavism? The power that has been squeezed out for 2,000 years has returned. Why? It was the invisible demon who deprived them of their power, and no matter how he looked at it, the invisible demon had no reason to stand on the side of the demons against them. Feng Yin only felt as if there was a huge shadow shrouding his head, and the heavy pressure was suffocating. "Senior brother, please wake up quickly. Now, what are you going to do?" In the demon spirit dream, the demon king stretched out his hand and opened a window in the void. What he saw outside the window was the change that had taken place in the desert oasis. Hundreds of demons who returned to their ancestral state surrounded Feng Yin and the others. The eyes of these gentle demons were already full of ruthlessness, as if they were hungry beasts, ready to make a move in front of their prey in the tent. As you can see, I have stimulated the ancient blood of these children. Although they will not live for long, they can still do a lot of things before they die. With that, he also took the initiative to turn his head and look at Fenrir, who was in the form of a girl. "I also want to thank you for the curse that you have been holding for 2,000 years. Without it as a medium, I would not have been able to stimulate the blood of so many people at once through the poison-extracting physician." Fenrir simply ignored him and only treated the demon king as if he did not exist. Wang Lu sneered and said, "Those idiots think that all this is the work of the invisible demon, but they don't know that the real mastermind behind everything is the ancestor that they worship as gods. They are indeed a group of wastes who deserve to perish." The demon king coldly snorted. "There is not much time. It is better to advise you to make a decision early." As the demon king spoke, he closed the window and glanced at the opponents in front of him. Suddenly, he frowned. "However, it seems that you have made a decision?" Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang sneered in unison. "Kill you and everything will be solved." "Yes, that's right. So, I won't play with you guys anymore. You guys stay here and kill whoever you want." After saying that, the demon king's figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. Although Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were fully focused, they still couldn't make him stay in time. After the two missed, Wang Lu immediately used the dream-building technique and tried to break the dream blockade. Ouyang Shang couldn't intervene, so he turned to Fenrir and said, Just now," Fenrir in the form of a girl snorted. "You want to ask why we didn't make a move just now?" Ouyang Shang was stunned for a moment. After thinking for a while, he said, "I want to say that you look really beautiful like this." "Hee, I think so too." "Wait, I'm not asking you to flatter me with flowery words. I already made a move just now. Otherwise, do you think he ran away by himself? If I hadn't swallowed him, you two little guys would have been beaten to death by him. How would you be qualified to talk to me here?" "Hey, so it turns out that his soul was destroyed just now, and that's why he disappeared?" Your Excellency is really worthy of being a god-level powerhouse. Your attacks are natural and leave no traces. Okay, what I swallowed just now was just a clone of him, and it was a dream clone. His real body is still hiding in the ninth abyss. Although he can't escape, there is nothing we can do about him. This demon spirit dream is completely beyond my control. I can't break through the dream blockade. He uses the dream as a bridge to communicate with the outside world, and I can't stop him. So if you want to save people, you have to rely on yourself? Wang Lu said and spat out a mouthful of foul air with a heavy smell of blood. But I still need time to break through the dream blockade here. How much can you help with the things outside? Fenrir said, you want me to save people? I can, but why do we have to do this? The demon wolf Fenrir had never been a race that was close to people. In front of Wang Lu, she put on a delicate and lovely girl's appearance, but that was because Wang Lu had a familiar smell. If it was Feng Yin and the others, she would definitely not swallow them because they were dirty. Because saving them is saving yourself. Wang Lu gasped and said seriously, since you have been following me for so long, you should be able to see the black tide. How do you feel about the power of the black tide? The smile on Fenrir's face gradually disappeared. Do you really have a way to eliminate the threat of the black tide? Wang Lu stretched out his hand and pointed upward. The arrangement above is to eliminate the black tide, and it has already begun to take effect. Unless he is willing to detonate the black tide before it is fully formed, otherwise, even if he has great ability, he can only watch the power of the black tide decline day by day. As long as I am here, the arrangement that I solidified with the dream-building technique cannot be changed. His previous dream of 100 years has left too many flaws. Fenrir frowned slightly. Although I don't quite understand, you want to say that as long as you are not dead, the threat of the black tide will gradually decrease. But if we don't save people, you are likely to die with your friends, and I will also die in the outbreak of the black tide? Wang Lu nodded. In fact, in the real history line, things were likely to develop like this. Otherwise, with the amazing power of an adult Fenrir, who could destroy it? Fenrir pondered for a long time, and finally shook her tail. She chuckled. Well, I will help you. However, when Fenrir was about to make a move, she was suddenly stopped by Wang Lu. Wait a minute. I suggest not to kill. Why? I am worried that there is a trap. Wang Lu explained. That guy died so cleanly and without any backup. Don't you think it's too simple? It's like waiting for me to beg you to save people. With that, Wang Lu took a deep breath and then patiently said, just now, I used the dream-building technique to perceive the demon spirit dream, and my understanding of the black tide has deepened. Right now, this black tide is only a fine line away from maturity. It's also my good luck that if I came here 3 to 5 days later, he would have really succeeded. And it was precisely because he was about to finish his work smoothly that he was somewhat lazy, which gave me the opportunity to take advantage of. However, my current arrangement is not enough to weaken the black tide too much. Once there are any variables, it is likely to induce it to mature in advance and then completely erupt. Fenrir touched her ear. It's really troublesome. According to what you said, it's not right to kill him, but it doesn't seem right to not kill him either. What should I do? Wang Lu pondered. The Demon King left these descendants, most likely because he wants you to kill them and use them to generate strong negative emotions and quickly enrich the black tide. So it's better to do the opposite. Do the opposite? How? Wang Lu pointed to the sky and smiled without saying a word. Chapter 5:15. I say, junior brothers and sisters, can any of you explain what's going on? It was still a small oasis city. Outside the tent of the Great Elder in the center of the city, hundreds of devils still surrounded the tent tightly. However, the previous murderous aura had been swept away, replaced by a pink aura that was hard to look at. Hundreds of demons who had just condensed their blood into heavy armor, at this time, withdrew their armor, revealing their naked bodies, and then gathered in groups of 3 to 5, entangling their bodies together. Of course, there were a few who couldn't find their companions, so they simply kept the tent's pillars and continued to rub against each other, enjoying themselves. Then, lazy and sticky moans rose and fell one after another, interweaving into a sonata that made people blush. Is this a magical psychological attack? In the tent, a cultivator of spirit sword sect could not help but ask. Feng Yin, who was sitting in the middle, cautiously nodded. Perhaps. So you must guard your primordial spirit and not be confused by this chaos. As soon as his voice fell, a high-pitched moan and scream came from outside the tent. Several men and women who were entangled could not help but twitch, as if they were struck by lightning. At the same time, they raised their heads high, their eyes turned white, and saliva dripped from the corner of their mouth. This scene, no matter how one looked at it, was like a certain phrase that started with a high and ended with a tide. Is this also part of the illusion? Feng Yin said, perhaps, it's used to further confuse us? In this way? Feng Yin continued to try to explain, perhaps the customs of the demon race are different from ours, or, Lin Wan hesitantly guessed, Senior Brother Feng Yin, I feel like they seem to be taking drugs? Taking drugs? Yes, the Great Elder once said that there is a drug called 5 stones powder in the mortal world, which seems to be like this when taken. Feng Yin was even more confused. I know 5 stones powder, but although the effect is not that strong, the nature is similar. In short, do you think they awakened their blood and then surrounded us just to take drugs for us to see? Perhaps they want to lure us to take drugs together? When Lin Wan said this, she also felt that it didn't make sense at all, but she couldn't understand what these demons were doing. You, a bunch of idiots. At this time, Wang Wu's weak voice came from outside the tent. This is obviously Senior Brother's doing. He has created an opportunity for you. If you don't leave now, when will you? Feng Yin was suddenly enlightened by Wang Wu. At this time, those devils are in an abnormal state. No matter what the reason is, isn't it a good time to escape? Unfortunately, he didn't react in time and almost missed the opportunity. Retreat. Actually, there was no need for Feng Yin to say anything. Lin Wan and the others had already retracted the array formation and were fleeing at full speed. The human wall outside the tent was useless. The demons, who were still ferocious just a moment ago, were completely immersed in inexplicable pleasure, completely ignoring the escape of the human cultivators. Several cultivators of Spirit Sword sect unfolded their magical treasures, launched their methods, and escaped from the desert oasis as fast as they could, flying toward the endless desert in the distance. Which direction should we go next? Feng Yin, who was at the head of the team, asked loudly. Blessed Fountain. Wang Wu, who was carried on Wang Chenya's back, reluctantly raised her hand and pointed to a direction. It's over there. That's the nearest safe place. There's a fortress that Senior Brother personally arranged. Okay. Feng Yin was originally determined to go to Blessed Fountain. At this time, listening to Wang Wu's suggestion, he made up his mind and flew straight there. That's interesting, what is this white powder? In the demon spirit dream, Fenrir looked at the pile of white powder in the hands of Wang Lu with interest. Just now, she poured this white powder into the body of the desert demons through dream-building technique, and it immediately produced a wonderful reaction. After the ancient bloodline was stimulated by the Demon King, the strength of those demons soared, and their will became firm. They could not help but be immersed in the pleasure of nothingness, wantonly squandering the few remaining years of their life. According to the design of the Demon King, these demons were abandoned by him and should die in a fierce fight. They would attack the sword array of the Lingjian school like moths flying into the fire, and then drown the young cultivators of spirit sword sect by virtue of their large number advantage, and then die from the overdraft of their vitality. The anger in the fight, the pain of overdraft of life. These were a huge amount of negative emotions, which would become the last brick to complete the black tide. The design of the Demon King was so interlocked that it seemed almost impossible to solve. Unfortunately, Wang Lu found the flaw in the first place. The body of the Demon King was sealed in the 9th depth prison. The demon spirit dream was the only bridge for him to communicate with the outside world. In the dream, he stimulated the ancient bloodline of the descendants of the demon race in reality. This process was seen by Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang. Then Wang Lu pretended to break through the dream blockade with all his strength, while Ouyang Shang used this as a cover to flip through the dream-building technique scroll. In the shortest time, he found a similar spell, and by virtue of his heaven-defying level comprehension, he mastered this spell in the first place. Then Wang Lu provided the ammunition, the mysterious white powder that could make people want to die. Then Fenrir provided the power, and Ouyang Shang built the bridge. The mysterious drug that existed in the demon spirit dream was directly used in the minds of those desert tribes. It was also interlocked, and none of it was missing. White powder. It's just an insignificant trick to make people die from positive energy. If it weren't for the Demon King who opened the bridge between the dream world and reality, our last-minute dream-building technique wouldn't have been enough to project the existence of the dream world into reality. But in the end, everything is going according to plan. These demons have been completely crippled. Before they died, they made the last contribution to the disintegration of the black tide. It can be said that they died a good death. There will be almost no new growth point in the black tide, and even if the incomplete black tide explodes, its destructive power is relatively limited, but... Fenrir gently swayed her tail, but, things obviously won't end so easily. That guy is really cunning. He actually hid it from us for 2,000 years without revealing any flaws. Before, we always thought that he had no chance to turn over, but in the end. Wang Lu said, if it weren't for me, a time traveler, to change the history, you would have really been turned over by him. And considering the tragedy of the Lingjian school in the real history line, Wang Lu believed that the Demon King's means were not limited to that. No, to be precise, perhaps he should no longer be called the Demon King. The demon jade that symbolized the proof of the demon world's hegemon had no effect on him, which really showed the problem. Unfortunately, he had no clue what his true identity was. How much do you know about that guy? Fenrir shook her head. I have already told you what I know. There is nothing new to ask. But I am very curious. You two little guys, especially you, seem to know him quite well. But it stands to reason that he has been suppressed by me for 2,000 years. Since you were born, it is impossible for you to see him. Wang Lu inwardly sighed, thinking that it was really difficult to cover up the brilliance of a time traveler. During this period, some of his predictable reactions were easy to leave flaws. Especially since this senior monster wolf was meticulous, it was really difficult to hide anything in front of her. On this point, he could not be mentioned in the same breath as the model dog Quan Zouhua, who also had the bloodline of a monster wolf. Fortunately, Wang Lu had a reason to temporarily avoid this sensitive issue. The dream blockade has been broken. After a long period of effort, the border blockade of the demon spirit dream was finally lifted, and Wang Lu immediately slipped away. Sorry, now my primordial spirit and physical body are too far apart. If I don't go back now, I probably won't be able to go back. After that, Wang Lu left the demon spirit dream with Ouyang Shang, leaving Fenrir in the form of a young girl in the same place with a slight pout. Hey, little guy, you slipped away fast, but, you really think you're smart. It won't be long before we meet again. After that, she gently raised her head, revealing a wry smile. You left so fast, I didn't have time to tell you, that guy. I don't know when he escaped from the Ninth Abyss prison. Alas, those idiots, they thought they were smart and almost killed us. Wang Lu sighed, feeling angry and funny at the same time. Feng Yin and others really knew how to seize the opportunity. They made a prompt decision and left neatly. It was just that before they left, they did not think that the primordial spirits of Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were imprisoned in the demon spirit dream and could not immediately follow them. They carried the bodies of the two people and ran very fast, but they did not know that the connection between the body and the primordial spirit was almost torn off. The two lead disciples were reduced to wandering ghosts from then on. Fortunately, Wang Lu broke the dream blockade in time, and at the same time, the strength of the two people's primordial spirits was far stronger than the ordinary king pill, so their primordial spirits persisted and did not disperse all the way back to their bodies. And when their primordial spirits returned in their consciousness resuscitation, no one knew how long it had been. Big brother, you finally woke up. When Wang Lu opened his eyes, he was already in the fortress of Blessed Fountain. He heard a burst of surprised cheers in his ears. Unfortunately, the focus of the cheers was not on him, but on the person beside him. Feng Yin, Yang Fei, Kai Xia, and the others mostly surrounded Ouyang Shang and asked about his well-being, but they were slightly cold to Wang Lu. After all, the former was someone who had been cultivating with them for decades, and they were like brothers. However, there was still one person who chose to stay by Wang Lu's side. Yo, master. Sister. Wang Lu chuckled and greeted the girl in front of him. At the same time, he sighed with emotion that he almost accidentally called her master. However, after he woke up, Wang Wu directly closed her eyes and began to re-enter the rhythm of cultivation, completely ignoring Wang Lu's greeting. This cold reception made Wang Lu miss the time when he was cultivating on the mountain, the master who coveted his hundreds of millions of assets and did not hesitate to propose to him many times. Alas, when you were young, although your moral integrity was full point, you were really not cute. In any case, this trip to the desert had finally come to an end. Although it was not a complete success, there was important progress. The real murderer of 100 years ago had finally surfaced, and one of his biggest killing moves, the black tide of demon spirits, had also been abolished. The next thing to do was to gather all the forces that could be gathered and completely crush him. However, at this time, Wang Lu suddenly heard Yang Fei saying to Ouyang Shang. Big brother, we just received a letter from senior brother Lu Xian. A junior brother has gone missing in the ghost weeping forest. They have been looking for him for a long time, but they still couldn't find him, so they had no choice but to ask for help here. The management training of Lingjian School had a great risk factor. It was common for the disciples to explore the savage land by themselves and encounter danger. However, upon hearing this news, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang simultaneously felt a chill on their backs. Chapter 5:16. The disappearance of a disciple of Spirit Sword sect in Ghost Weeping Forest. For a management trainee plan full of risks and variables, it was a common occurrence. When the sect drafted the plan, it even reserved 1/10 of the death quota, which was simply pulling up seedlings to help them grow. However, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang intuitively felt that things were not that simple. For them, intuition had always been an important reference for action. No matter how vague or even absurd the content of intuition was, it must not be ignored. Therefore, after hearing the content of the letter conveyed by Yang Fei, the two of them frowned and began to think about the possible secret behind this matter. The missing junior brother was Wang Donghua, the backbone of the Golden Generation. He was good at faking foreign objects, and his skill in controlling objects was at the top level in the Golden Generation. His life source magical treasure, the Golden Nucleus Puppet, was even more wondrous and could be called a life-saving weapon. How could such a person suddenly be lost in Ghost Weeping Forest? At the same time, Yang Fei was still immersed in the joy of his two senior brothers' resuscitation, so he didn't notice that their faces had become worried. When he spoke, his mood was still quite relaxed. That kid Wang Donghua always likes to rely on his many magical treasures to go to dangerous places to court death. Previously, when he was in Mount Qingyun, he was restless and repeatedly lost and was then rescued by the elders. Unexpectedly, after coming to the savage land, he still hasn't changed his bad habits. Ghost Weeping Forest, I remember it is the intermediate goal of senior brother Lu Xian. Right now, they haven't even built their first base, but he ran to Ghost Weeping Forest alone, really. Before he could finish his words, Kai Xia angrily slapped him on the back of his head. Do you know how to speak? Your own junior brother is in trouble, yet you still take pleasure in his misfortune? Being slapped, Yang Fei shrunk his neck and somewhat indignantly muttered, what could happen? This is not the first time that Kid Donghua has done such a thing. Before they set off, the elders have helped him advance the Golden Nucleus Puppet to spiritual treasure, which can save his life. At this time, he is most likely lost somewhere. When the time comes, we will search and rescue together. Kai Xia coldly humphed. Good, then why don't you take the lead to save people? Are you just idling here? Hey, I am now the person in charge of Blessed Fountain Base. If you let me take the lead to leave my post and run to Ghost Weeping Forest to save people, do you still want this base? Kai Xia unceremoniously ridiculed, you, the person in charge, staying here will only add to the chaos. During this time, from the base operation to serving the two senior brothers, aren't I the one who single-handedly took care of everything? Ever since that flood dragon was executed, you haven't played any role. Whenever you encounter something, you would only shout and wrangle, and then with bloodshot eyes, you would clamor to run to the desert to avenge senior brother. Hey, whose eyes are red? Yang Fei was exposed by Kai Xia, and his face seemed to be on fire. Don't talk nonsense. Kai Xia expressionlessly took out a recording crystal from her mustard seed bag and said, oh, I knew you wouldn't admit it. Hey! Yang Fei had always been tolerant of Kai Xia. At this time, he was stimulated to the point that he couldn't take care of himself. He grabbed the crystal stone and said, don't go too far. Kai Xia still wanted to say more, but she heard someone next to her finally couldn't help but shout, you too, even if you want to flirt, look at the occasion. Resuscitation has just been issued to the two senior brothers. They need to rest. At this time, even Kai Xia's cheeks were red. I didn't do that with him. Seeing that this topic could no longer be returned, Ouyang Shang, who had just resuscitation, sighed. Ghost Weeping Forest? Very well, I'm ready to go. As his voice fell, the room was dead silent. The disciples of Spirit Sword sect around the sickbed were dumbfounded. Thousands of words were stuck in their throats. As the big brother, Ouyang Shang had always been conscientious and took good care of his junior brothers and sisters. However, at present, he was still seriously injured, yet he was in a hurry to save people, this was too. Senior brother, don't joke with me. Your primordial spirit has been away from your body for too long and has just returned. It will take at least 3 to 5 days of rest to recover. How could you risk your life in Ghost Weeping Forest? That's right, senior brother, if you're not assured, we can send a few more people to help. In any case, the Blessed Fountain Base has been initially operated, so we don't need to leave so many people to guard it. Ouyang Shang shook his head. It's not that simple, I'm afraid I have to come forward. However, as soon as he finished speaking, someone patted his shoulder. Turning his head, he saw Wang Lu seriously shaking his head. Ouyang Shang was startled. He didn't expect that his opinion would be the opposite of Wang Lu's. After thinking for a moment, he waved his hand to signal his junior brothers and sisters to leave. Yang Fei and the others were also stunned. However, after many years of listening to their big brother, they didn't continue to pester him. Instead, they quietly left, leaving only the two people who had just recovered from a serious illness in the room. Ouyang Shang was silent for a long time, and then asked, "Do you think junior brother Donghua's matter is related to that thing?" The so-called "that thing" naturally referred to the tragedy in Wang Lu's history, which led to the almost complete annihilation of the Lingjian school. Wang Lu said, "After traveling through time, I have been involved in so many things that the history has long been interfered with beyond recognition. Therefore, I have no way to determine whether there is any connection or not. However, you should also feel that this matter is probably not simply a certain junior brother courting death and falling into danger." Ouyang Shang said, "It's indeed a bit of a coincidence. It just happens to be stuck at this time, as if deliberately not letting us go back to the mountain." For Ouyang Shang, after dealing with the desert demons, the most important thing was to return to the mountain and report the matter of the demon race to the elders. He didn't say it before because the truth was still completely hidden in the fog, and rash action might be counterproductive. However, now that the enemy was clear, there was no need to worry about any unknown threat. The enemy was the demon race, and it was different from those peace-loving demons in the desert oasis who had been nearly completely domesticated by Fenrir. The last demon king was tyrannical, ambitious, and ruthless. If left unchecked, it would be a great threat to the entire 9 regions. Such a powerful opponent had far exceeded the limit of the Golden Generation. This was a powerful enemy that must be dealt with by the elders of the Lingjian school and the entire Wanxian League. By now, the unknown threat had been clearly explored, so there was no need to let the elders retreat because of the past events. Moreover, there was enough evidence in the desert oasis, so there was no need to expose the identity of Wang Lu as a time traveler to win people's trust. Thus, this was the best time to seek help from the elders of Spirit Sword Sect. Unfortunately, in the Savage Land, general communication spells were completely ineffective. Sending a letter through the altar was already the limit, and this was only limited to the inside of the Savage Land. It was almost impossible to send a message to the outside. Therefore, if he wanted to report the situation to the sect, someone must personally deliver the letter. Then, just as he was about to resuscitation, he heard the news that his junior brother was missing in the Ghost Weeping Forest. The Ghost Weeping Forest was not far from the desert, so he really couldn't help but think of that. Ouyang Shang said, "It stands to reason that he should have no chance to turn things around in a short time." Wang Lu said, "Perhaps he himself doesn't have it, but he still has his men, and the desert tribe may not be his only chess piece. Fenrir only said that there are no 2 powerful creatures in the Savage Land, but by her standard, I'm afraid that even the elders of our Heavenly Sword Hall are not that powerful. And that Demon King has been operating in the Savage Land for some time before being suppressed by Fenrir." Ouyang Shang nodded. "So, this matter may indeed be done by the demon race." Junior brother Wang Donghua is a hostage in their hands, and what they want is, Wang Lu said, "What they want is for you to go and save him immediately, so that you can avoid going back to the sect to report the situation, which would expose their existence too quickly. At the same time, if it goes well, they can also catch a more important hostage. Therefore, the rational choice is to ignore the threat of the other party and do what you should do." Ouyang Shang said, "Are you saying that I should abandon my junior brother? I'm asking you to make a more rational choice. Read it as rational, write it as cold-blooded? TSK, I didn't expect you to be so idealistic. Let's put it this way, everything we discussed just now is based on vague speculations. Perhaps junior brother Wang Donghua just accidentally lost his way, or perhaps junior brother Lu Xian has already found him and is scolding him for being undisciplined while writing a letter to Blessed Fountain to report that he is safe, and you and I are just having a false alarm. Ouyang Shang said, or perhaps junior brother Wang Donghua has fallen into the control of the demon race, and his life is at stake. Even the whole line led by junior brother Lu Xian is exposed to the risk. At this time, as long as we make a slight mistake, as long as there is a slight mistake, the number of people exposed to the risk will only increase. Wang Lu said. Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu looked at each other for a long time, and neither of them gave way. At this time, the door of the ward was violently pushed open, and Yang Fei, who had a relaxed face just now, walked in with a gloomy face. In his hand was a letter with an image technique. The letter was personally written by Lu Xian, and the spell was also arranged by him. The image on the letter was very simple and crude. A bloody arm was lying quietly on a piece of white rock, and the wound of the arm was still slowly flowing with blood. Yang Fei said with difficulty. Lu Xian said that it was Wang Donghua's hand. Obviously, it was done by someone, because he was holding a letter in his hand, and the letter was written with the blood of junior brother Donghua. As he spoke, Yang Fei flipped the letter to the next page. The image changed, and a square but rather jerky human word appeared, "Come." Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu both sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Things had come to this point, and the original vague speculation had undoubtedly been confirmed. It was indeed done by the demon race, and the other party had issued a naked threat. "Big brother, what should we do now?" Yang Fei eagerly asked. Ouyang Shang got up from the bed. "Gather the team, we'll set off." Then he looked back at Wang Lu. Wang Lu took a deep breath. At this moment, he had to think hard, weighing all the gains and losses that might happen next. Ouyang Shang's attitude was so firm. Even though he knew it was a dead end, he still wanted to move forward bravely. Then, should he follow him and risk his life to save people? Or, should he just abandon him? Abandon this unprecedented rare genius since the establishment of the Lingjian school? As a professional adventurer, Wang Lu was very clear about the importance of making a decision. It was just that, when it came to making a decision, it was not as easy as he thought. And at this time, another person opened his mouth. "Senior brother, I'll go with you." While speaking, Wang Lu incredulously looked at Wang Wu, who was walking in from outside the ward. "Hey, where is that pure girl who blushes when talking to people? Do you have a plan? Why did you suddenly become so active? Master, isn't your estrus period a bit too irregular?" Chapter 5:17. Wang Lu could actually understand Ouyang Shang's decision very well. After all, they were essentially the same kind of people. Whether it was the chief disciple or the eldest senior brother, while this title shone brightly, it was also bound to bear great pressure. After all, the rights and obligations had to be equal. When the junior brothers and sisters encountered danger and difficulties, as the eldest senior brother, he had to step forward bravely, even if it was not the best choice. For the impeccable tacit understanding and trust between the golden generation, for the illusory human heart, or perhaps for the persistence in the bottom of his heart. In short, not only Ouyang Shang, the way people acted was often like this. The best solution was placed in front of them, but they had no choice. This was the principle of people having no choice in Jianghu. Of course, Ouyang Shang was not simply seeking his own death. His assurance, Wang Lu could also understand a little. First of all, the opponent used the hostage tactic to threaten his side. This was a conspiracy rather than an overt plot. The use of a conspiracy meant that the opponent's strength was not overwhelming. Otherwise, he could directly make a move and crush everyone present in an instant. Why would he need to go through so much trouble? After all, the golden generation had just begun to grow up. For those old seniors in the immortal cultivation world, they were nothing more than a slightly higher level of ants. If a supreme of the unity stage was here, perhaps he could kill the golden generation with a single thought. There was no need to go through so much trouble to use a broken arm as a deterrent. The opponent's strength was not enough, so he had to supplement it with a conspiracy. Then, if he could grasp this point and gather the strongest strength to attack head-on, it was possible to settle the situation in one fell swoop before the opponent's conspiracy had time to unfold. This was Ouyang Shang's train of thought. While he seemed to impulsively shoulder the heavy burden of the eldest senior brother, he actually made quite rational thinking and judgment. But in the final analysis, this was still a kind of risk, and in Wang Lu's view, the benefits could not offset the risks, so he would rather make the opposite decision, but unfortunately, all right, I'll go with you too. Ouyang Shang was slightly stunned. It was naturally best to have Wang Lu as a helper. He had a deep understanding of the strength of this transmigrator junior brother, but why? It was precisely because of the deep tacit understanding between them that they could understand each other's persistence. Therefore, Ouyang Shang understood that when Wang Lu's opinion was different from his just now, there was basically no possibility of turning back. Parting ways was already the best result, but now he actually changed his mind so cleanly. Was it because of Wang Wu? Ouyang Shang glanced sideways, but soon gave up thinking about it, because now was not the time to think about these issues. Wang Lu also said, I suggest that we send 2 junior brothers back to the mountain to report the matter of the demon race to the elders. This is a major event in 9 regions, which cannot be delayed. Senior brother, what do you think? Ouyang Shang's eyes narrowed. Send 2 junior brothers back to the mountain? Originally, I planned to go there myself, but considering that speed is not my forte, the ghost weeping forest needs my strength more. Wang Lu's explanation was reasonable, but Ouyang Shang knew very well that this was not what he really meant. The opponent used a bloody method to threaten them. In addition to telling them to go to the ghost weeping forest and walk right into the trap, it was also a warning not to tell anyone about the demon race. Wang Lu's suggestion was undoubtedly a provocation to his opponent. This would put people on both sides at risk. Those who returned to the mountain to report might be ambushed, and at the same time, the hostages in the ghost weeping forest might also lose their lives. Of course, from another point of view, this was also a risk that must be borne. The matter of delivering the letter was indeed very important. The more the other side tried to deter them, the more it proved this point. At the same time, it also showed that the other side did not have the means to block the way of delivering the letter. Of course, delivering the letter would be extremely risky, but if one was overcautious, then they would not be able to do anything. But, very well, junior brother Lu Li. As soon as Ouyang Shang named a person, Wang Lu interrupted, junior brother Lu Li is versatile. It's too wasteful to just use him to deliver the letter. The terrain of the ghost weeping forest is complex, which is more suitable for him to play. I suggest that he be included in the rescue team. Ouyang Shang pondered for a moment and then acquiesced to this suggestion. The 2 young cultivators who were picked by Ouyang Shang were overjoyed and deeply felt that they had gained his trust. However, Ouyang Shang waved his hand, indicating that they should set off as soon as possible without saying anything more. This was because he really could not look directly at the passionate gazes of his 2 junior brothers. After the 2 junior brothers left, Ouyang Shang was silent for a moment, and then sent a riddle to Wang Lu using his primordial spirit. Junior brother Wang Lu, are you so pessimistic about the matter of delivering the letter? Wang Lu said, I just don't want a useful person to inexplicably bear too much risk. In my timeline, Lu Li will become an amazing cultivator. Those who can survive the cataclysm should not die so early. Oh, your excuse is really ordinary. In your timeline, I'm also a dead person, so why do you need to waste time on me? Alright, then I'll tell you the truth. I have a good relationship with Lu Li, and as for the other two, I won't feel so bad even if they die. Well said. Ouyang Shang sighed. He wanted to say something, but didn't know what to say. Wang Lu said coldly, the taste of sacrifice is not good, but sometimes sacrifice is unavoidable. What we can do is to reduce the scope of sacrifice as much as possible, instead of wasting time and leading to greater sacrifice. I know that as the eldest senior brother, there are some things that you have to do, but I actually have a way to help you get out of your current predicament. I'd like to hear the details. It's very simple. Tell Lu Xian and the others about our current encounter and risk, and let them decide whether to continue to ask for help or to sacrifice themselves. Wang Lu said, if they are really the golden generation of Lingjian school, they should make a rational choice. They might even threaten us with their own lives so that we don't go. At that time, you won't have any burden to speak of. Of course, I know that this kind of thing is basically subjective guidance and self-deception. You can't do it, so it's the same if I do it. Don't be so angry, it's the same for me to sacrifice myself. In that team, I have a good relationship with Lu Xian. You still can't agree? Wang Lu sneered, as expected, as the eldest senior brother, you are good in everything except for being soft-hearted, which is a fatal flaw. Then, what are you going to do? Ouyang Shang asked lightly. Wang Lu sighed, what else can I do? Didn't I say just now, count me in for the rescue? Ouyang Shang finally couldn't help laughing, it seems that we are about the same. You are indeed the future chief disciple of Lingjian school, you have also inherited the common problem of the school. Wang Lu sighed while looking up at the sky. To say that he was soft-hearted, actually, it was not necessarily true. It was just that he suddenly thought of something just now. In the real history line, this Ouyang Shang still had an irreplaceable position in the hearts of the elders of Lingjian school even after his death for 150 years. Because, this was the foundation of Lingjian school. If he could really sacrifice anyone for his own reason and interests, then, what was the difference between him and Xianghua, whom he had always disliked? At the same time, in the distant periphery of the Ghost Weeping Forest, the Spirit Sword team headed by Lu Xian was cautiously marching in the mountain forest, searching for the trace of the missing Wang Donghua. Senior brother, I'll have to trouble you to do it again. I've lost him again. Lost him again? Shen Yiwen, what's wrong with you? At the end of the team, Lu Xian, holding 2 copper coins in his hand, somewhat angrily questioned the junior brother who was responsible for tracking them. Shen Yiwen also felt wronged. I don't know. The spiritual energy in this Ghost Weeping Forest is scattered, so it's very difficult to track. Moreover, that person seems to be blocking my tracking at any time. Every once in a while, junior brother Donghua's clue will be completely messed up, and it's impossible to distinguish. Lu Xian pondered for a moment and then clenched his teeth. Very well, I'll do another divination. This time, you must follow me closely. The more times I perform divination in a short period of time, the less effective it will be. Not to mention, I'm still a beginner in divination. Junior brother Ming Xian, you also help me. If you notice that someone is deliberately disrupting the tracking, you can track them in reverse. Yes. The 2 junior brothers responded in unison. Then, Lu Xian took a deep breath. His jade mansion and void core bloomed with light. With this light, he threw the copper coins high. The copper coins continued to spin in mid-air and then fell into his palm. East. Lu Xian said in a deep voice. His voice was hoarse and unpleasant to hear. Shen Yiwen nodded, bit his fingertip, and then dropped a drop of blood to summon his spirit beast, a half-hidden blood mist. The fog monster was a very rare monster. Its strengths and weaknesses were extremely prominent. Its frontal combat ability was very poor, but its nature was bloodthirsty. Its sensitivity to blood was far beyond other creatures. By chance, Shen Yiwen managed to capture a young fog monster. With the help of his sect's elders, he subdued it as his spirit beast. At this time, it just happened to be used to track Wang Donghua's whereabouts. The person who did it left behind a broken arm. Shen Yiwen collected a porcelain bottle of blood from the wound. After the fog monster appeared, he dropped a drop of black blood from the porcelain bottle into the body of the fog monster. The blood mist suddenly swelled and twisted, as if it was in a carnival. The fog monster was a kind of creature with a special diet. Compared to the fresh blood full of vitality, it preferred the cold blood that contained the resentment of the dead. Compared to the blood that Shen Yiwen used to summon it, the dirty blood from the broken arm was more suitable to its appetite. Unfortunately, there was only one mouthful of delicious food. After swallowing that drop of dirty blood, Shen Yiwen no longer fed it blood. The hunger and thirst of the fog monster was unbearable. Driven by its instinct, it began to look for the same smell. Several times before, the fog monster found clues in the forest. Shen Yiwen and the others tracked along the way and indeed found some clues, such as Wang Donghua's blood, as well as the residual aura of his magical treasure. However, every time they tracked halfway, they would be blocked by an inexplicable force, which made it difficult for them to continue. For this new tracking, Shen Yiwen didn't have much hope. The tracking effect of the fog monster was gradually decreasing. At present, he had used the fog monster to track him many times. The hunger and thirst of the fog monster had obviously declined a lot, and its ability to sense things had become more and more sluggish. Without the help of senior brother Lu Xian's divination, it would only wander around randomly. Of course, that was because the opponent was cunning and had left traces of Wang Donghua everywhere in the ghost-weeping forest. The instinct of the fog monster alone was not enough to eliminate the interference. However, this time, the situation was beyond his expectation. Just as Wang Donghua's dirty blood dripped, the fog monster issued a sharp howl and then rushed to a certain direction in the east without Shen Yiwen's reminder. At the same time, it also caught Shen Yiwen off guard. When he wasn't paying attention, it ran away. What the hell? Shen Yiwen was shocked. He didn't have the time to greet his senior brothers. Lifting the flying sword under his feet, he followed the fog monster and flew to the east. That fog monster was his lifeblood, so he couldn't afford to make even the slightest mistake. After following the fog monster to the east for an unknown period of time, Shen Yiwen suddenly found that the surrounding forest seemed to be particularly dense with branches and leaves, which blocked the light. The surrounding yin energy was so dense that it made his whole body cold. As an elite disciple, Shen Yiwen immediately became vigilant. He began to operate his Shudan at a high speed while looking back. He saw that senior brother Lu Xian and the others were not too far behind him. Their flying swords were not as fast as his, so they could only barely keep up. However, seeing that they didn't lose track of them, he finally felt a bit relieved. Then, just as he was thinking, a strong warning came from his heart. Not far in front of him, the figure of a one-armed man stood there quietly. His face was pale and covered in blood, but his appearance was vaguely discernible. Junior brother Donghua, is that you? Chapter 518. Seeing Wang Donghua at this time, Shen Yiwen was delighted at first, but then he was shocked. More than a day ago, when Wang Donghua's arm was found in the vicinity of the ghost-weeping forest, Lu Xian organized everyone to have a discussion. At that time, most of them speculated that Wang Donghua might have encountered an accident. He was the genius cultivator with the best life-saving ability in the team. The golden nucleus puppet could almost guarantee him to escape from any unfavorable situation. So, conversely, if the golden nucleus puppet was not effective. Before the search and rescue began, everyone was already mentally prepared that they would likely only find the body of their junior brother Donghua. Moreover, even if they found him alive, they would have to face a powerful opponent with unknown strength. Whether they could save him from the hands of the other party was completely unknown. Therefore, they were particularly eager for the arrival of their big brother. Right now, their search and tracking work was nothing more than continuing the clues. They didn't expect to find junior brother Donghua, but now Wang Donghua was clearly standing in front of them. Was this really junior brother Donghua? For a moment, Shen Yiwen became vigilant. However, the next moment, the vigilance in his heart relaxed by 80% because he once again heard the familiar tone of Wang Donghua. "Oh, I finally see my relative." His voice and tone were exactly the same as the familiar junior brother Wang Donghua. Shen Yiwen was pleasantly surprised and quickly asked, "Are you okay?" Wang Donghua shrugged his shoulders and said with a bitter face, "Senior brother, do you think I look okay? My right hand is gone. One wife and one concubine, only one concubine is left, do you think I will be okay?" Shen Yiwen simply didn't know whether to be angry or to laugh. "You slut, even after experiencing this kind of thing, you still can't change your bad habit. By the way, who did this to you? How did you escape?" Upon hearing this, Wang Donghua's complexion slightly changed. "You mean, the person who did this to me?" "Yes, where is he? How is his strength?" To be able to escape without anyone noticing, his strength should not be too strong, right? In short, you can rest assured that Big Brother and the others will come back soon. At that time, they will definitely avenge you. Big Brother is coming? Wang Donghua revealed a pleasantly surprised look. "That's great. In that case, I have nothing to worry about." As he spoke, his body went limp and was about to fall. Shen Yiwen hurriedly went forward to support him. However, just as the two of them were about to touch, Shen Yiwen's intuition warned him again, warning him that there was great danger ahead. Danger? What danger could it be? Unfortunately, before he could react, an ice-cold sensation pierced through him and quickly spread to every corner of his body. Shen Yiwen incredulously looked at his junior brother Wang Donghua in front of him, looking at his cold smile, as well as the even colder dagger on his chest. "Junior brother Donghua, you are not junior brother Donghua." Shen Yiwen finally realized what he had encountered. He quickly turned his head, wanting to warn the people behind him. The dagger in his chest had pierced through his jade mansion, so he could no longer use his sound transmission spell. But as soon as he opened his mouth, he felt the strength in his body disappear at an alarming rate. His entire body seemed to be melting, and he couldn't even speak a single word. A moment later, his consciousness completely sank into darkness. Strange, where is junior brother Yiwen? The first person to arrive was Xia Mingxian, the tracker in the team, second only to Shen Yiwen. He had been following behind Shen Yiwen the whole way and secretly protected him with spells. Once there was an external force that interfered with Shen Yiwen's tracking, he would immediately counterattack. Therefore, it could be said that Xia Mingxian was the one who followed Shen Yiwen's whereabouts the most closely. However, at this time, he was surprised to find that in just a blink of an eye, Shen Yiwen had disappeared. Although this ghost-weeping forest was strange everywhere, it shouldn't make a Shudon stage cultivator disappear just like that, right? Xia Mingxian, who was full of confusion, was about to go deeper into the forest to explore when he heard Lu Xian's stern voice behind him, "Don't go." "But, junior brother Shen, he just..." Xia Mingxian said as he continued to walk forward. Boom! The next moment, a sharp metallic sword chi fell in front of him and exploded into dust. The aftermath of the sword qi was also very painful. Xia Mingxian was taken aback. Senior brother, I am saving you. Do you want to be like junior brother Yuan, disappearing inexplicably? Lu Xian said and then shook his head with great resentment. It's my fault, I shouldn't have let him chase me so closely. I only thought that big brother would arrive soon, and when he comes, all the problems can be solved, but I forgot that big brother repeatedly told me that the closer I am to success, the more I can't relax my vigilance. Hearing this, Xia Mingxian's heart sank more and more. Senior brother, you mean, junior brother Shen Yuan, he has, yes, and this time, it's right in front of us. Lu Xian said. His eyes were already bloodshot, as if they were on fire. This. How could it be? My spell has always been by junior brother Yuan's side. If something really happened to him, in the end, Xia Mingxian could no longer go on. There were no fools in the golden generation who deceived themselves. The truth of the matter was actually simple and clear. His spell did not work, and Shen Yuan was taken away under his eyes. The so-called taken away was just wishful thinking. Just like junior brother Wang Donghua, he could only pray that they were still alive, still living as hostages under the control of the unknown enemy. If I catch him, your father, will definitely tear him into pieces. Xia Mingxian clenched his teeth, and blood continued to flow from the corner of his mouth. His relationship with Shen Yuan was usually the best. The two of them had similar cultivation methods and could cooperate with each other. When they were cultivating on the mountain, they were inseparable, as close as brothers. But today, right in front of his eyes, Lu Xian was also indignant, but as the leader, he must control his feelings. Mingxian, come back. Let's wait for Big Brother to arrive. Believe in Big Brother, he will certainly avenge the two junior brothers. Ouyang Shang arrived at the Ghost Weeping Forest a day later. There were not many people accompanying him, only two people, Wang Wu and Wang Lu. For this kind of high-risk job, there was no need to bring too many people. Even the arrival of Wang Wu had caused a lot of criticism. Big brother, it's not that I don't believe in your judgment, but, in this situation, isn't it too risky to let junior sister Wang Wu participate? Previously, after experiencing junior brother Shen Yuan's accident, I really don't have the confidence to protect her. Regarding Lu Xian's doubt, Ouyang Shang only said, it doesn't matter, junior sister Wang Wu will take care of herself. Moreover, she has the strongest bodyguard by her side, so there's no need to worry about her. While speaking, Wang Lu smiled and waved to Lu Xian and the others. Hello, everyone, I am the strongest bodyguard. Regarding Wang Lu's life experience, Ouyang Shang still used the old saying, he was the product of the old sect leader's enjoyment of life. Considering that Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang's performance in too many aspects was extremely consistent, Lu Xian and the others accepted the reality after a short period of surprise. What's more, Wang Lu's life experience was not important, what was important was his strength. The next step was how to carry out the next step under the leadership of Ouyang Shang. Xia Mingxian, who was eager for revenge, suggested that Big Brother immediately lead the team to go deep into the Ghost Weeping Forest. But Ouyang Shang had other ideas. The other party indicated that I should come, and now I'm here. It won't be long before the other party takes the initiative to take the next step. We might as well wait and see. Of course, during this time, we have to strengthen our vigilance, and must not leave any opportunities for the other party. Then he began to explain some things to pay attention to. When Ouyang Shang was thinking seriously, his thinking was far more meticulous than ordinary people. After arranging the instructions, Xia Mingxian, Lu Xian and the others gradually felt a trace of relief and confidence. As a survivor who stayed in the same place, the fog demon was likely to witness the whole process of Shen Yuan's mysterious disappearance, which was an important clue. However, the fog demon lacked intelligence and had always been difficult to communicate with. As a spirit pet, it was more used as a tool. Even if it witnessed the whole process and memorized it mechanically, how to extract this memory was still a problem. What's the problem? Haven't you Golden Generation even been taught the soul-searching technique? As Wang Lu said that, his palm bloomed with green light, and a soul-searching technique was unceremoniously hit on the fog demon. The bloody fog burst out with an unprecedented scream, and for a moment, many people's faces suddenly changed. What the hell are you doing? That's the precious relic of junior brother Shen Yuan. He loved this fog demon the most when he was alive, and you actually. Wang Lu lightly said, now that he's dead, do you still care what he liked when he was alive? Are you guys out of your mind? This is the most direct clue to avenge Shen Yuan. Isn't it good to let this spirit pet die a worthy death? With that, he ignored the other people's eyes and directly used the soul-searching technique on a disc that was prepared by Ouyang Shang in advance. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.